Welcome back to Totally Unexpected. I'm your host, Chavie, and this is a really exciting guest. I have on today my husband, dun 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 dun. It's very exciting. Chaim and Bruk, aka Chaim, my husband for 19 years. When you hear this, the next week is our anniversary. So it's really kind of good timing. And when we recorded this, it was on his birthday. So I don't know, the stars align. We've been married for 19 years. We live in Bozeman, Montana, where we run the Chabad house together for 18 years. He's born in Brooklyn, New York, but he's going to tell you everything himself. So I think the introduction is covered. Really excited. You never know how it's going to go when you have family on. It's like such a different dynamic. And I'm so grateful that we had a good time. And I really think you're going to enjoy. So go listen. This very special episode is sponsored by our dear friends Leora Ross and her daughter Kochav. Back in the day when my husband was a yeshiva student traversing Montana and inspiring Jews, he ran into Leora, who at the time was an attending physician in nephrology and transplantation in Great Falls. She was drawn to the community by the beauty of the land and the genuineness of the people, as well as the medical need. Now, 20 years later, we are still honored to call Leora and her family our friends. She's visited our community, supports our vital work, and believes strongly that every Jew deserves a warm community environment, even when living in frozen Bozeman. She dedicated this episode in honor of the first yahrzeit of her dad, Reb Shmuel Zev of blessed memory, and in honor of Klal Yisrael, our amazing Jewish family, with blessings for continued perseverance, continued growth, and continued vitality. Am Yisrael Chai. And we have a second sponsorship, which is sponsored by Daniel Ben Yitzhak Fega and Sarah Amuna Bas Sarah, who are dear friends and pillars of support in our Montana Shlichus. May Hashem bless them and their entire family with revealed good health, financial abundance, and nachas from their loved ones. Hello?
Hello?
Hi.
How long do you think I can stay on Spilkus here?
I know I had some technical issues, but I think I got them all sorted. It's pretty funny that you're on Zoom, even though we live together. I'm manifesting. Are you ready for this one, Michelle?
I don't know. Are we being recorded?
Obviously. I'm manifesting a recording studio so I can have a recording studio and I can have guests in my office, in my recording studio. I know I first have to be able to pay the current bills.
No, I think you should manifest it with all your interviewees, not just with me. See if it manifests with the other ones too.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just saying in general, it'd be nice to
100%.
have a recording studio. I feel like this microphone is in my face, not in a good way. Okay, so fun morning. How was your morning?
Never better, thank the Lord. My kids always make sure that my morning is spectacular.
Yeah, I keep thinking as I was taking Zizi to school, I was like, how does one 7-year-old create such chaos for both of us in such a short amount of time?
She's a gifted child.
I don't know. Anyhow. And then after that, I came home and I wanted to go on the treadmill.
You had a fight with Peloton.
And I had a fight with Peloton that was unsuccessful and made me
Here we are.
made me have to rush a little bit. But I'm very excited because I think my experience is that we both have a public persona. We both have been interviewed. We've both been on podcasts. We both had a lot of exposure. And at the same time, I was trying to think back, I don't think I've ever been interviewed and I was asked about my childhood or past previous experiences that had nothing to do with like the topic, right? Usually we're getting interviewed on infertility or adoption or special needs or Montana or shlichus, right? So it's usually very focused on a specific topic. And what I'm excited to do is to talk about you as a person. I think it's going to be very fun and interesting. And most people, they know you, right? But they don't know a lot of your history and your childhood and all the different things that make you. And I think it's also fun to kind of do that together. So here we are. First of all, growing up in Crown Heights. I didn't grow up in Crown Heights. I lived there for a year, barely, right? So I actually am so curious about what was it like for you growing up in Crown Heights? What was your experience as a family, going to school? How was that?
I can't speak for Crown Heights. I can speak for my experience in Crown Heights. And my childhood was one that I remember as being amazing. So first of all, I loved school. So I went to All Torah from preschool all the way through the age of 15. And, you have better teachers, worse teachers, some good friends, some not such good friends. But the overall experience of life in the hood, life on Crown Street till I was 11 years old and later on President Street was amazing. So for the first 11 years of my life, we lived in a one-floor rented house with the Luxon family upstairs. Mm-hmm. It was a 2-bedroom house. And at one point from 1991 till 93, there were 5 children and 2 parents in a 2-bedroom house.
Wow.
And there was a little uncomfortability. And my father sometimes would have to go across the street to the Agudah Shul to use the bathroom because it was a 1-bathroom house. And he would take his Yediot Achronot Israeli newspaper and his slippers and march across the street and make his way to the Agudah basement for the bathroom.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
True story. And in some ways, living on Crown Street in a where all the kids were in 1 bedroom was even more fun than moving into the big house on President Street. There was something about it, having neighbors upstairs, having the shul across the street, having the cozy spaces that you were on top of each other, so you had to figure out how to get along. And if one kid was using the toilet, you had to rush them out to get your turn. The kitchen was the size of, I don't know, a tiny kitchen. But somehow meals were knocked out. Guests were rolling in and out. When guests would come from Israel, they would sleep on the couch that turned into a bed in the front and basically in the living room. It was very happy, and school was amazing. I had amazing friends that I'm friends with till this very day. So I'm 42, almost 43. I have friends going back. Go ahead.
Yeah, but I want to stop you for a second because what you're saying about the like the growing up in like the 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom house as kids, like I actually relate to that because I grew up in shlichus in Texas, and for the first 18 years, we lived in the Chabad house. And so the house was actually quite large, but there was also only 3 bedrooms. And at one point, I think we were also like 5 or 6 kids in one bedroom. And I really relate because when I turned 18 and I was in seminary, we moved out of the Chabad house and we built a house, 10-minute walking distance. And like all of us were like, we don't want to move out of the Chabad house. We love living in the Chabad house. We love like being right there and having zero privacy. Like we didn't know anything different. And so I think it's such a fascinating thing when you are used to something and then you seemingly go to something bigger and better, but is it really?
Well, I think I also look back now as someone that lives in a, Montana stand. There's a 6,000 square foot home. And I like my privacy, and I like my kids when they go to sleep at night, and I have some quiet time.
Yeah. Can you imagine what it was like for the parents?
Yeah.
We were
so
kids.
I think back to that. I'm like, my parents' bedroom was touching our bedroom. Meaning it was, and the bathroom was 3 inches down the hall. I mean, the whole house was the size of a shoebox. And somehow we didn't even see it as an issue until now. In retrospect, I see it that way. But also, Crown Heights, you asked me about Crown Heights. Crown Heights back then when the Rebbe was alive was an incredible community. It had its issues and I was too young to know what those issues were.
Mm-hmm.
But we had a common denominator, whether it was going to get dollars or going to a Farbrengen or going to the Rebbe was leaving, coming and going. Friday night, we would daven in 770, and I still remember where we'd stand near the bima. The Bruks, had our set spot, and the Rebbe would turn around to listen to the Gabbai, the Shul Gabbai, giving the announcements of the Shalom Zachar, and the Rebbe was staring right at the Bruk children because we were standing right on the bima with the Gabbai, Rabbi Zev Katz, Rabbi Shia Pinson. Shabbos morning, that's where it gets interesting because our family was obviously Chassidim of the Rebbe, and my father sat through Farbrengen, and even though after a week at work, it was a hard thing for him to do. But Shabbos morning, we didn't daven in 770. Because if we would daven in 770 with the Rebbe, that means we would not have a family lunch. A Suda Shabbos would never happen.
Mm-hmm.
So we davened at a shul that started 9:30 in the morning across the street.
Mm-hmm.
We'd get home by 11:30, 11:45. We'd have a quick Shabbos meal so that at 1:30, my father could be in 770 for the Farbrengen. Some people would consider us sacrilegious. We're not big enough Chassidim because we didn't daven in the Rebbe's shul. But my parents felt that there was another component that had to be implemented to keep the family afloat, which is to have a sane, healthy Shabbos meal. In my entire childhood, I still remember the one Shabbos my father missed the Rebbe's Farbrengen because he had the flu, he had a fever, he literally couldn't get out of bed. But that was the one weekend that I can remember that he wasn't in 770. So it was a very, very different life than it is today. But the cohesiveness of the community from my childhood perspective, from my kiddie perspective, was wonderful. So you'd walk down the street, you knew everybody. Today I walk on Kingston Avenue, I don't know 90% of the people, which is a good sign for the community's growth. But as a kid, there was no such thing. You didn't know someone in the community. We knew everybody by name. So,
Wow.
and if they weren't my cousin, there was a miracle, but still we knew everybody. It was a really incredible childhood experience.
It does sound very like someone who didn't grow up in Crown Heights and didn't grow up living with the Rebbe in the neighborhood. It kind of sounds like utopian a little, I don't know. It feels, it's such a gift, especially nowadays when we're growing up with.
It was utopian. It was utopian on many levels, right? The community was smaller. So if my parents needed to get, be in touch with the school principal, it wasn't a production. You picked up a phone or a Lustig answered the phone.
Mm-hmm.
But it also brings to light why the Rebbe's passing in 94, for us in Crown Heights, perhaps the brunt of it, we felt it because we could tell the difference immediately. And that was, it wasn't the same anymore. It was a very, very different world. And we didn't have that uniting force to bring us together. And the excitement, it wasn't just the unity. The Rebbe kept Crown Heights an exciting place. And we lost that on Gimel Tammuz when the Rebbe passed away. And until Mashiach comes, that's not going to come back. And so I miss it. I miss the entire vibe. The vibe of we're running to here, we're coming to here. Imagine after school, most kids come home from school, they're worried about homework. We weren't worried about homework. We did homework occasionally, but it was, okay, the Rebbe is going to the oil, he's coming for the oil, there's mincha, there's dollars, he's giving out a kuntras, a booklet, it was so...
I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine what that would be like. Was it an everyday part of your life, like every single day?
I had classmates who I'll keep nameless for now, but I had classmates that were way better at it. Their parents allowed them to be in 770 at all hours of the day. My parents were structured. I wasn't able to roam the streets at 11 p.m. just because the Rebbe was hanging out in 770. But was it every day? Yeah, there wasn't a day in my life until Gimel Tammuz that in some way the Rebbe was part of it. So you'd come home from school, you walk, if you go to school in Alatayra, which is on 667 Eastern Parkway, you're walking by 770, so you're automatically checking in. So you're at least asking the bacher standing outside who looks bored out of his, very bored. You say to him, hey, where's the Rebbe? Did he go home? Is he in shul? Is he in the oil? I still remember the Rebbetzins Levaya in 1988, which was heartbreaking for us, even though we didn't know the Rebbetzin. But that's my point, is that now when you look back at it, you realize how much of our life was connected to this central command, the central energy flow that came out of 770. And I think people that didn't live it, even if they were Chassidim and Shluchim, if you didn't live it every day, you didn't miss it as much.
Yeah, well, we didn't know what we were missing, honestly. Exactly. I was very young, but even so, I'm lucky that I got to go to Dollars a few times because we would visit my grandmother in New York on winter break. And I have amazing memories from that. which is standing online for hours and my mother packing us snack bags and just having to be really patient. And even as young as I was, I still felt like it was worth it. But that's all. Yeah, when you don't have it, you don't really know what you're missing in a practical sense. Of course, in a global sense, we know what we're missing. I always have this feeling when things are tough and you have questions and you have like...
Who has tough?
Who has what?
Who has tough in their life? I don't know what you're even referring to.
I know. It's just kind of weird. But when things are tough, I always imagine and dream, like, what would it be like, right? If you could just ask the Rebbe. And here we are, the Rebbe set up a system where we have a mashpia and we have a Rav and we have all the tools, but still it feels like if someone could just tell you, someone like the Rebbe that was like, gave so much guidance, and you read the letters and people did get answers, right? People got really practical answers to the troubles they were having. And sometimes I really do wonder what that would feel like to just have such clarity.
Well, I have a lot to say. Some of it may be above the point of the podcast, but I want to share 3 points. The first is that there's no question that, I still remember when my mother was giving birth to my sister Rachel, and she was in labor, and the doctors wanted to induce. We didn't have to worry about what the doctors say or didn't say. My father picked up a phone to Rabbi Label Groner, the Rebbe's secretary, and said, "Label, the doctors want to induce. What are we doing?"
Mm-hmm.
And he tried to give an answer. My father said, "No, I want the answer from the Rebbe. Ask the Rebbe." So he asked the Rebbe, and the Rebbe told them to wait. And she had the baby naturally.
See, not fair.
Right, exactly. And so, and even when I was a kid, the Rebbe told my father to speak to a friend, a Refa did, a doctor that's a friend, but he didn't just leave it at that. He said, Feldman Sheikhia, speak to Dr. Moshe Robert Feldman from Crown Heights. So that part is for sure missing. And I think that, and that brings me to number 2, which is when I sit at a Farbrengen and I hear big mentors and rabbis talk about how everything's the same today. It's true. On a spiritual perspective, the Rebbe is still our Rebbe and he guides every move we make. But no one should ever try to convince me that it's the same like when we have a physical Rebbe who I can literally talk to or go to have a private audience with or write a note to.
Yeah.
I still remember Yom Kippur in 770 as a kid. I was under bar mitzvah. I came with tuna sandwiches and squeezy drinks, those little box drinks.
Yeah, juice boxes. It's called the juice box.
There you go. What I say, yeah, the juice box with tuna sandwiches, and I'm sitting and everyone's in the middle of Musaf and I'm downing sandwiches and drinking juice boxes, but I was 10 rows behind the Rebbe. And there's nothing that can replace that. For me, at least. Maybe it's because I'm not, maybe I didn't listen to Moshe Weinbaum and I'm not spiritually in tune enough. And I didn't dig into my energetics, but the bottom line is I don't feel like it's the same.
Right.
But that really also brings me to number 3, which is what the Rebbe produced in that community, the Crown Heights community, also reflected itself not just in the schools and not just in the community, but even in the summers. Like we went to the bungalow colony in the Catskills. We were a team. The boys and girls would stand in the front in the big field of the obviously at the right ages, we'd sit and play kickball and frisbee. And we were a family. You knew the Goldsteins, the Bistritsky's, the Markowitzes, the Briskys.
A little simpler.
It was not just simpler. Well, we lived simpler, so we didn't have the, everyone's bungalow was basically one windstorm away from disappearing.
Yeah.
But more than that, we were family. We, maybe not blood family, but we were, so when you have such a close-knit community and then you lose it because you get older and you move out of the community and sort of you lose touch,
mm-hmm.
It changes everything. And so, but when I look back at my childhood, I genuinely feel bad when I hear people talk about really devastating childhoods, which is a real thing. But I look at mine and I'm like, man, for all our flaws, we had an awesome upbringing around in Crown Heights, both because of the community and because of the Rebbe.
It's very interesting. I keep coming back to this idea of getting answers from the Rebbe. And I think obviously the Rebbe thought ahead and was brilliant in the way that he asked everybody to have a mentor, right? So we are set up for the future and we do have that guidance. And I think I look at our life And I think about what would it be like if we didn't really take that to heart. And we each have our own mentors, but we have a family mentor, right? And that has changed our life because we've gone through a lot of different things with a lot of real questions of like, how do we make a decision like this? And for example, sending kids to public school. What's another example that was like life-changing? And we have a lot of them. I'll come to me. But having a family mentor that understands nuance, right? That understands your family situation, that you both agree to, right? What that mentor says, you have to respect. So if it doesn't align with how you want it to go on either end, you agree to this mutual person that has the bigger objective picture. And I just think about how crucial that is in our life. And when I talk to people, I always recommend, I'm like, have your own mentor, but don't underestimate having a mentor that is someone that both you and your husband respect. So when you come across these really difficult questions that are really hard to take on your own shoulders, responsibility, like your kids' chinuch and, all these different confusing choices that you have to make as a family, I think that has been so life-changing and so crucial. And I do believe that because he's our family mashpia / mentor, that what he's saying, he has like the strength and the kayach of, I don't know if it makes sense to say the Rebbe or like, I don't know. Does that make sense to say that?
So the Rebbe would always say that when a Rav gives a psak din, when a Rav makes a ruling in halacha, in the realm of Jewish law, they are speaking on behalf of the Koyach HaTorah. They are representing Torah. Mm-hmm. And I think that when it comes to a mashpia, to a family mentor, it's the same thing. If we accept them as our family mentor, then when they tell us something, yes, it is a representation of the Rebbe's wants of us at this particular time. And so that's how I see it. Obviously, that's the way you see it. And I really don't think, you have taught me, you've trained me well about how the world likes to see things in black and white, but it's really so many things are not black and white. And when a mentor really comes into play, right, we're not going to a mentor to ask us if we should eat chametz on Pesach. That's not what a mentor is.
Right.
It's about those delicate, confusing choices that we get to make as parents or as communities or as spouses. And you need a third party, an objective party who can give you the straight truth. But like you said, it has to come with the mutual respect that the husband and wife are going to accept whatever they tell us. And we have that, and it's an incredible blessing. But I want to go back to the point you made earlier, which is, I think sometimes in that black and white world, which I was trained in, which I was raised in, I mean, I never heard of a gray area until I met you. And even then, it took about 10 years for me to even admit to you that there may be something called gray. But I think in that world, either you're an old chassid who's living in the past with the Rebbe and you're just kvetching because you don't have what you had 30 years ago, or you live in the present and you recognize the Ashgacha Pratis, the divine presence, how the Rebbe is guiding you in every moment. And I don't think those things are mutually exclusive. I think you can recognize that we have the most incredible gift in the world, that we have a relationship with the Rebbe like ours, and that Chassidus is the most impactful a dose of mysticism that a person can incorporate in their lives. Mm-hmm. And as Chavie Bruk always says, there's an and, capitalized A-N-D.
By the way, it's so funny because someone just messaged me and they said, I love how you always say and instead of but. It is true. I do that.
Well, when you're in the gray area, there is an and the and is, in this case, that I could also have what we call in Hasidic terminology, ga'aguyim, to yearn for something of the past that doesn't exist. If someone said to me, you still yearn for your mother, even though she died 13 and a half years ago? Yeah. What do you mean? You're living in the past? No, I'm not living in the past. She's part of my story, and I'm living every day trying to emulate what she taught me. It doesn't mean I don't miss her.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think the idea that somehow we're meant to move past the Rebbe's passing and not recognize that if you grew up in Crown Heights, in that vibe, in the hood, you're never going to stop missing that is a ridiculous expectation.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that, I mean, it's a little bit of a silly question, but is your experience that everybody, let's say in your, like in your classmate, in your friend zone, and your feels the same way and connects with the Rebbe the same way like you? Or is it also your personality that has you so connected?
You know, my friends and I always joke, what would Chaim Shul look like if he ended up in Crown Heights?
Yeah,
And
I actually wondered that. It's a little bit of a scary thought.
I was just going to say it's a scary thought because I don't think, you know, I think so much of the refinement and the world, the character development that's happened is obviously it's connected to who you marry and what your situation is with your children, and they all contribute and where you go
Circumstances, yeah.
therapeutically. But I do think that when you're in an environment, and again, Crown Heights, without the Rebbe, the way I grew up with, I could have ended up in some interesting places. But to go to your question, listen, I think everyone's experience is different. And where they spend the following 30 years after the Rebbe passed away makes a real difference in how connected they are to that.
Right.
But many, many of our friends, when we sit together, when we sit down to reminisce, it's almost like clockwork that we're going to end up under some bench or under some table trying to hear the Rebbe davening as the Chazan on Vav Tishrei when he was having yahrzeit for his mother, and fighting with Zalman Duchman and this one and that one about who gets a closer spot to hear what you want to hear. And we look back at it like, you know, back then it was like, oh my gosh, we're filthy, we're dirty, we're under a table. But now, how many millions of people would have loved to have that experience? And I can't convey that experience. Like, I want my kids to feel it. Actually, I want even you to feel that because you live in Texas.
Yeah.
But you can't give that. You can share the information, you can share the warmth and the vitality. You can't replicate an experience. And then for me, it's perhaps the most cherished experience of my life.
Wow. I mean, I'm being married to you. I know how impactful and foundational, especially at those young years, right? It has a huge impact when that's your environment for your formative years. Okay. So you said you were in LA Tyra till 13?
No, till 15.
Till 15. Okay. So then what happens?
Then a couple of my friends said they were going to learn for the third year of Masifta, they were going to Lud. And I said to my parents, I want to go as well. Mm-hmm. My parents were not too keen of the idea of me going to Israel, but, you know, it's far away from home. But your friends are going, so you go. I should have followed their direction, not my own. Being away at 16 did not do well for me. It was not a year of successful learning. I was way too far from home with not a lot of oversight. And it took them about 5 months to realize, when it was halfway through the school year already, that I was running my own ops, had nothing to do with what was going on in the yeshiva. So I was.
How did they find out?
Yeah, I mean, I was foolish, and I asked one of the teachers at the school. I was going home for Hanukkah, and I said, maybe you want to send my parents a report of how I'm doing in school.
What made you think to do that?
They sent me a sealed envelope to bring to my parents, and I respected their authority and didn't open it.
Really?
And so, yep. I was a goody two. What do you call it? A goody two shoes?
Goody.
I didn't really mess with authority. I always got along with the people running the yeshivas I was in, even if I didn't like them necessarily. So my father gave me a little hell and I got a little better. But again, living in a dorm at 16, thousands of miles away from home, I wasn't doing criminal activity. I was just not attending the yeshiva and engrossed in my learning the way I should have been.
What were you doing?
I would sleep in. I would go visit cousins. I did these extracurricular activities for the yeshiva to make, to create some political havoc. I was busy with a lot of things. And you're 16. You don't have to be that. You don't have to live that meaningfully at that age.
Yeah.
And, the following year, I made up for it. I ended up in Montreal in yeshiva, and I had an incredible year of learning. Because learning never scared me. I had the head for learning. It was just about a choice I had to make if I was interested or not. And I got to yeshiva in Montreal, and my teacher for Talmud, for Gemara, was Rabbi Moshe Stern. And man, did I have a year of incredible Talmudic study with an incredible teacher who I admire till today. And that's sort of where it was like a roller coaster. 16, I didn't do much learning. 17, I did a great year of learning. 18,
Why didn't you stay? Why didn't you stay in Montreal?
My father wanted me to stay in Montreal, but I had friends.
So you did the same thing again. You followed your friends instead of listening to your father.
Different set of friends. And one of them is still my friend, Chesky Wolf. And I was like, I got to go. I'm going to go to Detroit. And I had an amazing year in Detroit. And I even had amazing teachers in Detroit. But unfortunately, I did not spend enough time in their classrooms because we were very busy. Very busy with a lot of extracurricular spiritual activity. But bottom line is it was not in the learning world. And I look back, I'm not a person that lives with regret, but I do spend a lot of time, as you know, in my library, and a lot of it when I'm sitting in my library with all my piles of Sfarim and beautiful, wonderful books of Torah. I think, what would it look like if I had spent all 4 years in yeshiva actually utilizing my intellectual abilities and my student abilities to actually learn? It'd be an interesting thing to know where I'd be. I don't know the answer, but
in my understanding, you were pretty extreme as a bacher. Extreme, I don't even know, like spiritually, like how would you explain? And it's so funny because you also gave off this very Detroit vibe, but what people are always so surprised when you tell them you were only there for 1 year. You actually were in a different yeshiva every year. Like you always say, like you spread the love.
I like to say that I graced my presence in many different locations around the world.
Yeah.
Morristown, Detroit, Montreal, Lod, Tzfaz. I'm naturally, and I think this comes a little bit from my father's, the genes that I got from my father.
You're an extremist.
I saw things black and white. And so it was almost like either you're with us or against us. It's either you see the world the way I see it, or you're toast. And that not only with people outside of the community, but even within the community. And that is something that I genuinely regret. I think that so much of the discord in a community and so much of the anxiety and stress that we bring upon ourselves is based on that, these defined lines that mean absolutely nothing. The years that the Rebbe was not well from 1992 through 94, there was a lot of, I spoke about the cohesiveness of the Crown Heights community, but in those 2 years, there was different factions in the community about how to treat the Rebbe's health. Remember, the Rebbe's and the Rebbe's wife passed away 4 years earlier. So the Rebbe was alone, and basically it was up to the Rebbe's secretaries to care for his health, and they had different viewpoints on how to deal with it, and it really ripped us apart. And I look back at it and I'm like, why did I at 11 and 12 years old have to have an opinion about that? Like, what did I know medically? And I look
were you following the opinions of the adults that you respected, and you were just like, okay, these are their opinions, so I'm going to take those on? Like, was that how it kind of worked?
Mostly, I found these miniature idols, people that I idolized for one reason or another, or people that my parents idolized, or people that my grandparents idolized, which I should mention. I mean, I kind of missed it, and it's a big part of it. Another big part of my childhood experience was the fact that my maternal grandparents lived 4 blocks away. Yeah. And my grandparents, Shimon and Esther Goldman, were not just pillars of the Crown Heights community, and they ran a Gemilas Chesed that gave out loans every year to hundreds of people in the community, but they were an amazing Babi and Zaidi. And life with them, in other words, it wasn't like, Rebbe, your family, your school. There was nothing in our life that wasn't connected to our grandparents. When we went on a trip to Florida, to Orlando in the 80s, my Babi came along. But, Pesach, we lived in a 2-bedroom house. So for Pesach, we moved into my grandparents' house. And we had this clique of cousins, the Kleins and the Goldmans, that were all in Crown Heights. Of course, the Brooks.
Let me tell you, marrying into that, this concept is really quite a thing. I don't know if I still have my brain wrapped around it, but it was like, whoa, it was a clique. It was this huge, like, club, mafia club, we
had the Bruk side of the family too, and we were very close with them as well.
Yeah.
But the grandparents' cohesion that was created at the Hanukkah parties, at the Pesach Seders, at the Shabbos, my grandparents was sort of the the force that brought us together and the glue that kept us together. And it was an amazing thing. Like until today, there's this feeling of closeness that exists with my cousins, especially the ones that are my age. So Chaim and Chavie, Chani Shapiro, Maishi Goldman, each one of us in the family with the kids that are our age, we're so close. But going back to what you said, yeah, we idolized people, which idolatry is prohibited in Judaism. But when you're a teenager, today kids idolize, what's her name? Taylor Swift, whatever, all these big chachamim, all these big geniuses. We idolize what? We idolize people within the community. And if they felt a certain way about a certain person, we went along with it. And if you're an extremist by nature, you did it extreme. And that's a part of my youth that I look back at, and I really, I blame myself for some of it, but I do blame the elders in my life for not being a force of unity, kindness, and empathy. I mean, let's be honest. I didn't hear the word empathy till I got married to you. I don't know if it was in the vocabulary before, but it definitely wasn't in our world. Yeah. And that's something that I can't, I don't lose sleep over it. Because my rule, I don't lose sleep over anything.
Nothing stops sleep. No, right. We could have the biggest argument. You know when they say, like, don't go to bed angry? First of all, I think that's a dumb rule. But second of all, that is not the case. Because if there's an argument that gets away of sleep, guess what comes first?
Sleep. Always sleep.
Yeah. No, we're not losing out on sleep. I don't know how. That's the crazy thing. I don't know how you sleep when we're in the middle of an argument or you're anxious. You have so much anxiety and yet you sleep like a baby. Like, how does that work?
When you do a podcast with a sleep specialist, you should ask them about your husband who sleeps no matter what's going on.
Well, when you're awake, you're full of anxiety, but how you just like shut it off to go to sleep? Like, is that how it works? Or you're so exhausted from your brain driving you crazy all day that you just conk out? Like, how does that work?
I don't know the answer. I know that it's a very healthy thing to get a good night's sleep. Yes. And I think in America, most people don't get the sleep that I get. And one of the reasons I believe that I can function and accomplish a lot during the day is because, in my particular case, because I get a good night's sleep. But going back to my regrets, I don't lose sleep over it. But when I look back at it, my goal for the rest of my life, for all the years that Hashem will grant me, is to make sure not to be that, not to demonize people based on who tells you to demonize them, not to divide people based on superficial things that you don't even understand fully of why you.
Also, a lot of times when you actually, right, we had this conversation, right? When you hear something about someone, you hear, and it's like this whole persona is created. And then when you actually meet them and speak to them, you're like, wait a second, he's kind of a nice, decent guy.
Well, there's that too. There's the part of the person that you don't even know, and you judge them based on literally what's up. And then I had this epiphany when I was in my early 20s. I was upset at someone because they were in a fight with my friend. And one day I walked into the tent near the Rebbe's resting place in Queens, and I saw the two of them talking. And I'm like, hold on, I'm not talking to the guy because he's in a fight with you, because I'm defending you, my friend. You couldn't notify me that you made peace. Right. And that's where I realized I need to back off of being people's lawyers, of being so loyal, because I'm a loyalist.
Yeah, so I'm also, that we have that in common. We're so loyal that it plays a huge role in how, you make choices.
And for me, one of the biggest, that's why I get so offended when there's disloyalty. When someone's not loyal, it breaks my heart. It shreds my core, because
that's not extreme at all.
Shreds my core.
That statement at all, my shreds my core. Oh, I think we're still working on the extremism over here.
But I think another example, like a couple, 2-3 years ago, somebody said to me, "Oh, that couple? What? They're getting divorced." And I said, "Really? I just saw them together. I don't know what you're talking about." Just now, 2 weeks ago, in New York, the name came up, and it turns out that the person who told me the story mixed up between two siblings, and they gave me the wrong divorce of a wrong, right? Could you imagine? Imagine a rumor going around about someone getting divorced, about someone that you don't really know, but it turns out they simply made a mistake with the wrong family member. And now you have the machine of gossip and the machine of division and the machine of judgment is going and going and going. And it turns out you're talking about the wrong people altogether, which you shouldn't be talking about anyone because it's none of your business. But that's where I think with maturity and being married to the right person.
And living away from it all, probably. I was going to ask you, like, what do you think brought you from such a black and white attitude or perspective of life to moving towards, I think when you're stressed or you're not in a healthy state, right? We always go back to our comfort zone and that we all do things. Okay, I'm in an unhealthy state. I go to my comfort zone. So for you, I think when you're not feeling great, you go back to that black and white thinking because it's safe, right? Like when something's wrong or right and it's clear, it's an illusion, but it feels so much safer.
But think about it. Think about it. If there's something in your life that's troublesome, let's give an example that's realistic. Let's say one of your kids is doing something that you don't approve of.
Yeah.
The easier way out is to go to the black and white. This way you push them away and then you don't have to deal with the messy reality that's there.
Right.
But when you're in the gray area, now
you have to make space for people that are not doing what you want.
You make space, but also you have to deal with the details.
Yeah.
And you have to allow for your emotions to come to the forefront, which emotion is a separate discussion, but emotions and expression of emotions and pushing away emotions. We grew up with, you didn't discuss emotions. You cried when you tripped and fell and bumped your head. Mm-hmm. You didn't really cry over an emotional dilemma. Mm-hmm. You didn't really allow, and forget about crying, you didn't allow yourself to talk and share from an emotional perspective. Mm-hmm. And so if you're quashing the emotions, then of course it's easier to be black and white because then you don't have to deal with the raw reality, which is sometimes so painful that you want to ignore it. So I think there's multiple reasons for why I see the world the way I do today. I can't pinpoint one over the other.
Yeah, no, I think it's on many things, but it takes a lot of, you had to be intentional about it, right? It didn't just happen because you live out of Crown Heights and you're married to me. Like, right? You had to choose.
Not I had to. It's a daily struggle.
Yeah.
I don't think you get over. I mean, some of it becomes easier with time and practice, but you never get out of the black and white mentality and it goes away and never comes back.
For sure. That's what I said. Like if you're not doing well, it's so easy to fall back into that black and white pattern. I think also life circumstances, like you mentioned, if you want to be present and healthy in your life and be a good parent, you have to confront those things.
You know, you always laugh at me because you think that somehow I have a secret fetish or excitement with authoritarian dictators.
Yeah,
you know,
I do think that.
so you know, I don't know if it's true or not, but what I do know is
you're definitely fascinated by them. That is for reals.
So, but think about it. If you think about the black and white mentality, like I love the guy who doesn't give a hoot and does whatever he wants, and
doesn't leave room for choices.
Correct, because when you open up the multiple choice reality, mm-hmm. it's emotional, it's messy, it's uncomfortable. I mean, who wants to be uncomfortable? Who has time for uncomfortable? Right? That's always the excuse I've given. How many times have you heard me say, who has time for it? What do you mean who has time? What do you think you're the president of the United States? But sometimes I'll use that as a buffer to say, I don't want to deal with the little nitty gritty because it's too
much. It's too
I'm the boss. Just listen. You little kid that's 7 years old, you little stinker that's 11.
Get dressed. Put your clothing on. It's not that hard. Hence this morning.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to this morning. I'm not going back down that path. But I do feel like there are times that, you know, the easier option is to ignore the friend or to ignore the family member because they made you upset. Why do I have to go deal with the nitty gritty and the mess? Just tune them out.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, right? It's just like put up the walls. Whatever isn't working for you, you're outside the box. You can't touch me.
And the walls the walls are obviously they protect you, at least temporarily, but long term, they end up when what we've discovered, and I think we've discovered,
Yes.
mostly you discovered, but we've discovered that when the walls are put up, you end up keeping out the people that really should come in.
Yeah.
Because once you put up the walls, you don't get to choose, right? You turn off the emotions, you go into your little, what you called yesterday, the cardboard box.
Yeah.
Not a cardboard box, a steel wall.
I said to him last night, what were we talking about?
Probably this.
No, yeah, but no, we were talking about, okay, you went to Crown Heights for the kinnos and you were being social and you were having fun, and then the whole incident with money happened, and then you came back in Montana, and he's like, now I'm back in Montana. I'm like, yep, and you're gonna put yourself back in your little cardboard box, and you're like, no, not a cardboard box, a steel box. I'm like, oh, okay.
That's the truth, is that when we put up the walls, and sometimes we have no choice, or we feel like we have no choice, it's our coping mechanism. But if we put up the walls, we end up keeping the people that do love us and do care about us and do really want us to do better and want us to succeed. They're not, there's a whole segment of people in the world that claim they're coming to you only because they want to give you constructive criticism. And they think if they put the word constructive before criticism, it makes it any better. And I just gave a whole class yesterday at JLI where it's not so simple. Criticism is a thing you do as a last resort. But the people that love you, like your spouse, the people that care about
does
you,
that include husbands and wives?
No,
criticism is a last resort?
Well, according to the JLI class I gave yesterday, which is based on some midrashim and stuff, even spouses have to know the right time and place and tone and words to use when you give constructive criticism.
Right.
But at least it's with someone that loves you.
Right.
Or you hope they love you. But when you put up the walls, you're not even available for them. And who suffers from that? You put up the wall to keep some creep out of your life. Meanwhile, your kids are paying the price for it because the walls are up for them as well. So maturity, place of living, life experience, who you marry, recognition that that's not everything's black and white. There is a gray area. There's a whole litany of things that make that reality come together. And the funny part is that for me, now when I, as a more mature adult, learning the Rebbe's teachings, I'm like,
you see it in the teachings, right?
How did we miss it? How did we fail as Hasidim?
Yeah.
To really encapsulate what the Rebbe was teaching us all those years.
Because it matters so much in what the lens you're looking at things through, right? Like if you have a narrative, whatever you see is going to feed the narrative that you have.
Right. They say the story about a guy, two Hasidim came from Odessa and they went to their Rebbe. And one of them was telling the Rebbe how in Odessa, there's shuls and mikvahs, etc. So the Rebbe gave him a gold coin and said, here, this is so you can feed your family. The next guy came in and said, Odessa has all these problems. There's churches and there's unholiness. And the Rebbe gave him nothing. So he said to the Rebbe, how come you gave the other guy a coin? He says, I said the truth. He was not saying the truth. He says, no, I know the truth about Odessa. I was just curious which Odessa you live in, right? And so that is so much of our reality, the narrative of where we choose to see the world. People say to me, Rabbi, are you really that optimistic? I'm like, it's a choice we make every day. I can focus on Syria, right? And focus on Iran and find some reason to be miserable. Or I can look at the mountains in Bozeman and look at the successes and hear that your daughter got a 90 on her test, or hear that your child was kind to another person, or hear that your child, like many, we got that little note where many got this thing for davening nicely in 770 on Friday night, which we didn't know about until yesterday. You know what? I'm going to take that win, and that's going to be my narrative for at least the next 7 minutes.
Yeah. The thing that I find interesting is you are very positive. I also find like sometimes you put yourself in this little narrative that is not reality. So like when I come to you and say like, I'm really worried about, vacation and the kids being home, and you're like, but it's going to be fine. I'm like, it's not going to be fine. And it comes the time and it's not fine. And you're like, all surprised why it's not fine. And I'm like, I was trying to tell you, like, we need to come up with a plan. So it's an interesting, I guess, everything has its upsides and its downsides, right? I guess.
I think that part of being a little bit of, I'm not OCD, but I'm fairly organized and structured in my life and my day. And if I get off balance with my structure, it's not good for humanity. If I wake up 15 minutes late, my whole day can go to hell if I didn't have my schedule on, and you know that, you live with that. But I think coming with that same perspective is that we have things on the front burner and we have things on the back burner. Right now on the front burner is X, Y, and Z. You're talking to me about a vacation.
You don't like when I say something that's like future related.
Of course not. Who has time for the future when we're living in the present? And the present is pretty burdensome.
Right. But I'm like trying to prep and like be proactive and have the tools to navigate something that I know is coming and I know is going to be hard. And you're just like, no, we don't need to talk about and worry about that now. And they're both valid approaches. They just don't always work together.
I think you're also trying to cope with living with a guy who is not so good about doing things on the fly. So you know that if you came a week before spring break and you said, what are we doing? Then I won't either be. So you're trying to preempt me not being a basket case.
Right.
But by trying to preempt that, you're making me a basket case because I don't want to think about the future. So basically,
because it gives you anxiety.
No matter how you look at it, you're in the wrong and I'm in the right. And you are going to step into a landmine because you came to ask me about something that's happening in March when we're just starting December. So it's a pity on you. It's a real rachmanus that you have to put up with that.
Well, I actually am wondering, and it's kind of funny to do this in a more public setting, but I'm like, what is a pity for you? Like, what are the things that drive you crazy about me?
I don't know that there's anything that drives me crazy. I think there's some pretty interesting observations. I think it's always funny that I can go into any store in the world. Doesn't matter if I'm in Africa, in Spain, in Orcas Island, and you see three things on the shelf that look similar, and don't see any price tags. Naturally, you will pick the item that is most expensive. I don't know how you get such genes. It's definitely not from your parents.
I don't know. What? I don't know. My mother has pretty expensive taste.
Maybe. I don't know. But I mean, that's an interesting observation. I mean, I think I don't know because we've never had it, but it is interesting that you're a night owl and I'm an early riser. And so I don't know why weird people wait up till 11:30 at night reading books. I mean, I read a book and after paragraph 1, sayonara, I'm out for the night. And you'll read for 13 hours because you have to finish the book on time. You want to finish it, you can't. So there's observations about differences, but is there anything about you that drives me crazy? I don't know.
There definitely is. There's definitely things.
So tell me what.
I think you don't like when I hold you accountable. I don't think you like when I'm on to you.
Well, no one likes getting busted. No one likes being busted. And no one likes being married to someone.
Right, but I think there are people who let it go more, and I don't really let things go so much. Like
you're going back to the Weinbaum point, you're like an energy detector. So if I walk into the room and my energy might be slightly off, and then you want to interrogate why it's off, and I'm like, nothing's off.
Well, let's define interrogate. Asking the question of what's wrong, are you in a bad mood? That to you is an interrogation.
Yes, that sounds like an interrogation.
Okay, so let's just put it out there what we're talking about here. Anyway, so you bounce around from yeshiva to yeshiva, right? And then what happens after that? What happens after yeshiva? I don't know. I have one brother, like, I don't really understand the yeshiva system at all. Like, so after yeshiva, what happens?
So a lot of guys, I got smicha. I got rabbinical ordination. I studied for it. I got tested by Rabbi Yaroslavsky, who's the primary Chabad rabbi in Israel. And then I bounced around the world from Victoria, British Columbia, to Santa Cruz, California, to Moscow, Russia, I wasn't as much as others because I was a mama's boy. And my mother trained me. We could talk about mama's boy if you want in a minute, but
we will.
I didn't want, like, Rabbi Kotlarski once asked me if I want to go to somewhere in Africa. I'm like, no, I want to go where there's 7-Elevens. Like, what are you sending me to Africa? Where I have to get shots to go there? It wasn't my thing. But I bounced around a lot. I did end up getting a job writing and working for Rabbi Eliakim Wolf, who's he was running and probably still does the Central Chabad Yeshivas in Israel. He was the primary fundraiser here in America, and I was good at writing, and he paid me well, and I worked for a year doing that for him.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had spent a lot of time with Avadia and Nechama Goldman in Oklahoma City. So when I was 23 and a half, just before my 24th birthday, I went on full salary working at Chabad of Oklahoma City, sort of like a program director of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
And
is that where you kind of develop this love or this like desire to go on shluchos? Because you grew up in Crown Heights. So how did that happen? Like, did you always know that you wanted to go on shluchos, or was it like just kind of happened?
My mother always claimed that from the age of 12 or so, I was already discussing that I'm going to be a rabbi and, that kind of language. But the truth is, when I was 12 and a half, myself and my friend Mendy Goldstein, who's today a rabbi in Naperville, Illinois, shliach in Naperville, Illinois, he had just turned 13. He's older than me. And so we said, okay, now he has tefillin, so we can go every Friday to Manhattan. Mm-hmm. And my father at the time worked on 47th Street in the Diamond District. And so we had sort of like a little inn for what it's worth. And we built up a weekly route. We take the subway to Manhattan, and we'd go from booth to booth, store to store, putting on tefillin mezuzahs, and we built lifelong relationships. I'm still in touch with guys like Jay Unison, Leo Unison, the Zach Tools, Tamir, and a wonderful family. Till today, 30 plus years later, I'm still very close to them. So the idea of outreach and connecting with my Jewish brothers and sisters and sort of bringing them back into the Jewish fold and making them feel like they're part of the Jewish family was in my blood for a long time. Hanging out by Avadia and Nechama, what that did in Oklahoma was really give me an inside scoop to the ups and downs, the challenges that could exist in that gig. So when we came to Montana, so many of the challenges that for most young Chabad couples is like a big size. Mm-hmm. Like there wasn't a lot of surprises because I had seen it all.
Right. And I grew up on shluchos, so
right. You knew it from your own childhood.
Yeah.
But I, being a Crown Heights kid, I really saw, one of the clear examples for me was one year, right in the beginning, Avadia asked me to call a bunch of people to invite them for Rosh Hashanah. And he gave me a list. And he checked off a bunch of names, and I wasn't paying close attention. The names he checked off were the names that I was absolutely not meant to call because they were antagonistic of Chabad. And I thought it was the names that I was supposed to call.
Oh, Hashem.
And I said, after a few hours, I said, I don't know what's going on about it. Everyone's hanging up the phone.
Everyone's so mad at me.
He goes, what do you mean? I said, look, I called it. He goes, oh, you called. And to give him credit, he didn't throw me out the window. And, it was one of those lessons that you learn the hard way to pay attention.
Yeah.
Well, to pay attention, to listen when someone's talking because the details matter. But my point is really that what I got in Oklahoma over those years is building relationships with people and learning what that's like. How do you befriend people who are living a very, very different lifestyle than you and treat them with non-judgmentalism and dignity? And actually, more than any of that, and I think that's one of the things we both have in our community here in Bozeman is that they become our dear friends.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting because I just got a text from one of our dear friends in Bozeman, and she had just kind of read my article and then heard my video and read your article and heard kind of what happened with Mendy in Crown Heights with the whole racial incident. And she texted me and she's like, I'm so sorry to hear what happened. We love you so much. We support you. Like a beautiful message. And it really struck me. I was like, wow, like this is our family. These are our people. Bozeman became really our safe space. And it's interesting because I remember 2 weeks ago when he landed from New York, and he called me from the car from your phone and he's like, Mommy, I'm so glad to be in Montana. New York is not for me. Yeah. But just to that point where I'm so grateful, and I know you feel the same way, that our community in Bozeman really became family and have supported us through. Like, we are not a traditional couple. Our family did not build traditionally. And our community, who's been here throughout all of that, have been with us through it all, and our core cheerleaders and support. And never have they
wavered
or questioned, or they're there. And It's hard to explain.
It really it's so refreshing, because not only is our Jewish community, the people that come to our Jewish events and our shul and our classes and it's the greater community. Meaning,
Mm-hmm.
I get Chabad fellow shluchim who ask me, how do you build relationships with non-Jews? And I look at them like, I don't even understand the question, and I genuinely don't.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's because I watched my parents and not just my mother, my father as well, interact in his business, and my mother at Bloomingdale's and her doctor's office. She was always the kind, compassionate person. My father was always treating human beings, which is so fascinating because he's a tough cookie. But when it came to he had this soft spot of dealing with people in a very like he always warned me, you never go, and this is before Uber, you never go in a taxi and don't give them a $5 tip. I'm talking about 25 years ago. I'm like, $5, the whole taxi costs $5. I should give them double the money. He goes, yeah, you don't go out of a taxi, right? So, and I think that for me, when I look around Bozeman, it's not just our amazing Jewish community, but like the fact that I can walk into Honda and crash into Matt's office, the manager at Honda, and just we're shoving the bull. We're talking like two friends, catching up on life. Yeah. Or walk into the barber shop and 7 Gentiles that are barbers. Hey, Rabbi, what's going on? You're like, what holiday do you have coming up?
Yeah, I have the same experience with the people that I love and engage with in the community. You have it more because you're out there way more than I am. But we always talk about this, but it's such a striking, memorable occasion when we came home with Chaya from adopting her, and we walk into our shul, which was in our home then, and we walk in, and there were tables set up, and there was like the tables were. We flew back, and it took, I don't know, we were gone for what, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever.
Something like that. Yeah.
And they had come in, and they had basically anything I could possibly ever need for a newborn was there, set up with like welcome signs. And we were a young couple. We weren't even there for that long, but that's what created that family feeling, is that we felt supported. We were on this crazy infertility journey. We were pretty isolated living in Montana. We do this crazy thing of adopting a child, and we were met with such open arms and love and support. And I think, we're, thank God, here almost 18 years, and that's continued to build.
And I think it's either lost in translation or not talked about enough. And that is a young couple moving to a place that's distant, not just geographically, but from the environment that they are used to. Mm-hmm. And the feeling could be very much of aloneness. I mean, we've had 4 other couples that joined us in Montana, and each one of them in their own way is sitting in a city similar to the way we were 18 years ago. And I think that even for my parents, when they came out, your parents, again, they're from Texas, they experienced this in their own life. But when my parents and my mother especially...
My parents too, when they come here.
No, I know. But when my mother met some of the people in the community... Yeah. And they were so warm and so amazing. And not just because they praised us, but the way they interacted with my parents were with warmth and love and appreciation for the fact that their children live in Bozeman, Montana, which now sounds like a normal thing. But back then, saying Bozeman, Montana did not sound like a normal thing for an Orthodox, even in the world of Chabad. I think
Montana, there was nobody in Montana when we came.
Right, but I think it gave my parents so much comfort, especially my mother, to know that we're kind of in good hands.
Yeah, we're in good hands. Exactly. Truly, truly. Because the truth of the matter is, we were babies. Like, we're doing this really big, mature thing, but how old? 21 and 24? Like, 22, right? So I was 22, you were 25 when we moved here, right? I mean, if you think about it, it's quite bizarre to do that, and people do it all the time in our circle. But like, if you really think about it, you're building a community and you're putting yourself out there. You don't even know really who you are yet. I think, when was it? I feel like I said this. At my birthday party, my 40th birthday, that was a few months ago. And when I spoke, I was like, I grew up here. I was like, you guys helped raise me. You know what I mean? Like, we were community leaders and we were building a community, but at the same time, we grew up here. to be somewhere from 22 to 40, like there's a lot of growth that happens in those years,
And I think that it was that experience and the way we interacted with the people in the community, and they interacted with us,
Yeah.
that allowed us to grow.
Oh, for sure.
And we learned from them. I mean, there are people that have been with us, right? I've been
From the
studying
beginning.
Gemara. I'm studying Gemara with Seth for almost 18 years. We've been through how many tractates? We've been through 3 or 4 tractates of the Talmud, and now we're on our 4th or 5th. And when you spend that amount of time with someone over that many years,
Yeah,
you're going to learn so much, and they're going to teach you so much. So yeah, when I met them,
because a lot of these people are older than us, right? We're got to learn.
Absolutely. And their life experience, I mean, I think that's, talk about maturity. I think one of the things that our society, and I've spoken about this unrelated to our personal family, but when the Torah tells us about respecting elders and celebrating our elders, I think we came to this as, we have to throw out everything from the past, and we young little, I'll fill in the blank a different time, young little Fisher is this one was bad, and that Abraham Lincoln was hello. It's very easy to play, what do they call it, Monday morning quarterback? What's that term? Something like that?
Yeah.
No, you don't know the term? Anyhow, I'm not a football guy either, don't worry. If I got Monday instead of Tuesday, I apologize in advance. But the point is, it's easy to sit and say the elders don't know what they're talking about. But when I sit on Shabbos these days with Howard, who's 83 years old, and Jane, who's 81 years old, I try not to talk. It's not easy for a rabbi not to talk.
Especially for you.
And I try to internalize the art of listening, because no matter how you twist it, they have so much to offer from their life experience. And I miss my grandparents, because they were my dose. I mean, my bubby, she gave me life lessons that
I'm very grateful that I got to be with her for a few years, not long, but she was something else. So we did kind of jump ahead to Montana, but before we moved here, you met me, right? So that year that you were in Oklahoma, that's when we started to date, right?
Well, I managed to do about 3 months of work in Oklahoma before everything was destroyed by Chavie Bruk. And so a friend reached out to my friend. You take credit?
I take credit for that.
It's funny, because 2 weeks before I traveled to San Antonio to date you, after we were introduced through a third party who knew both our families, I was sitting at Shabbos Friday night in Oklahoma City, and I still remember in the Goldman's old house, and Andy Kaplan, who we both know, who came to be with us for Rosh Hashanah, she looked at me and said, "Chaim, what's going on?" I had like this glow on my face.
Just for the thought of dating?
There's something cooking. There's something coming down the pike. And I said, nothing. What's going on? Nothing's going on. But then when I came back I had a Shabbos in between our dating, and I was in Oklahoma. There was no way of hiding it. And she's like, Chaim. I'm like, in my head, I was saying, you're really annoying. You're not supposed to be, but she goes, is there a girl? And I just had this big smile from ear to ear. Didn't say a word, but they got the memo right away that something was cooking.
Yeah.
But yeah, going back to, we met on January 1st, 2006. I recognize something that most guys should, that is, if the girl you're going to date, the woman you're going to date has a full-time job, and you kind of have a job of some sort, stop making the girl quit her job to come date you, fly out to visit her. And so I
dated a lot of people before you, and it was always like a back and forth. It was like, you come here, and then I go there, and it was a lot. And I ended up having to fly a lot, and I did have a full-time job. And that was like really it wasn't like the deciding factor, but it definitely was noticeable. I did not have to travel anywhere to date you. You came to San Antonio however many times it was. And it was huge. And you waited till I was done work, and we would date in the evening.
Or Sunday, when you weren't working.
Yeah.
So for me, it was a no-brainer. I mean, the girl's working. I can work remotely with a laptop. At that, I was doing mostly design, programming stuff. I could do that with a phone and a laptop. So I checked myself into the La Quinta Inn near the San Antonio airport. The blocks, your family was very gracious. They wanted to offer me meals. I declined. I did not want to have any obligation to the blocks if this was not going to work out.
You're like, I'm keeping my distance.
I'm a loyalist. I'm like, either we're in or out. So until I'm in, I don't want to have anything to do with you guys.
Yeah.
We dated. It was clear to me, I think, by the third or fourth date that this was heading very much in the right direction. Of course, on the 7th date, I freaked you out because I totally checked myself.
No, it wasn't the 7th date. It was, I want to say it was the 5th date, the 4th or the 5th. I think there's like a date that's like pretty universal where it goes really bad. Oh my gosh, I came home. So first of all, I'm the oldest in my family, right? So I'm like thinking that I'm dating and like nobody knows, but all my sisters, all the kids are looking through the window and they like, oh, I remember I came home late from a date and I was hungry and I wanted to have dinner. And my little schnooky brother, what was he, 11? He was like, no dinner for people who go on mysterious outings.
There you go.
It was so funny. Anyway, yeah, so things were going really well. And then I think it was the 5th date. My parents might remember because it was very significant. I came home and I'm like, I don't know what happened. Like, I don't think this is working anymore. Like, this is extreme. Like, I was so confused. It was the craziest thing that's probably ever happened to me.
Wasn't that, I think we dated at the time at the Lock and Terra Mall.
Yeah, we were walking around and you were just silent.
I was checked out.
You didn't say a word for like 2, and then the date was like, we cut it short. It was like 2 hours and we're like back home. And I was like, I come in the door and I'm just like, I don't know what just happened.
And then I called my uncle Shmulik, who was my dating coach. He called me and goes, what's going on? I'm like, nothing. He goes, what do you mean nothing?
You're like, nothing. Everything's great. I couldn't believe it. I was like, are we on the same universe?
Yeah.
So what happened?
Listen, at the time, I didn't know anything happened, but I think I knew that this was coming to we were wrapping it up. We were going to get engaged. And I think there's a lot of like a big reality check that kicks in.
It freaked you out.
I think there's layers to it. And obviously every person's individual story, which I don't think is important for public discussion, but I think everyone's life story makes them see the world through a certain lens. I think for me, I was an independent rabbinical student who roamed around the world freely, who didn't have really many things keeping them bogged down in any particular lifestyle. I never spent time with a girl, never mind living with one in the same bedroom and in the same home.
Yeah.
And suddenly, oh my God.
Which I take issue with, but okay. It's a different discussion.
And the next thing I know, I said, if I get engaged, then 2 months from now, this is real.
It's completely turns life up on its head.
And I don't think it was negative. I think it was just like it was the aha moment.
Yeah, I don't think it was negative either. I think you just kind of were in your own head and you were freaked out in not a bad way, but like reality check kind of way, right? And you're in your own head. But the funny thing is that you didn't realize that was.
I don't know. All I know
and then it was like the next day it was back to regular, and here we are.
Not only that, 3 or 4 days later, I was sitting on your couch in your parents' living room because it was a done deal. We were going to go to the oil, to the Rebbe's resting place, and we're going to get engaged.
Yeah.
And our engagement was a whole of 7 weeks. I mean, we dated. Our first date was on January 1st, 2006. We were married March 22nd. And then when I tell that to people in Montana, they ask me what year. Like they assume it's about. I'm like, no, 7 weeks. I guess 10 weeks from when I met you, 10 weeks later, we were married.
That's a little crazy.
Yet here we are, and we still go on the same podcast together. So, I mean, it can't be too bad.
Well, it takes a lot of work, which I feel like we should talk about.
Right, but I think we should talk about it, but I think the work has to happen no matter how the date. Where you think couples that date for 12 years and live together and then get married?
Oh, 100%. Marriage is a lot of work. I think for most people.
I think talking about that, I think it's fascinating that when you get married, no one tells you.
Yeah.
Right? They train you about all the halachas, all the important laws about family purity and mikvah. And if you're lucky enough and your parents are a little bit more open-minded, maybe you'll get a little dose of the realities that being married and the complications that can arise from that. But how about just train some young people to know, right? You remember when we first got married, the first couple of years, every time you were upset about something, I thought we were getting divorced.
Totally. But that was even extreme for me. I'm like going back to the extremism. It kind of feeds back into the same idea. It's like either you're in or you're out, right? So there's no such thing as having an argument. It was like, if you're going to argue with me, then you're not in, right?
We're not compatible. We're
right.
done.
We're not compatible. I forgot. You used to say that a lot. We're not compatible. So that's it. We're getting a divorce.
But that's, and then in my mind, in that extreme mind, you're not only getting divorced, you're already calculating what it's going to look like as being divorced. Meanwhile, all you were arguing about whether to have the lasagna or have steak for dinner.
Well, I don't think that's what we were arguing about, but
I understand. But I'm just saying it's amazing.
Well, that's also, I think there's a segment of people. It's not just you. It's a large segment of people that their brain does that, right? I think it's more of the anxiety-prone brain that like jumps to conclusions and also jumps to like realities. Like, oh, we're getting divorced. And not only are you thinking about divorce, you're thinking about like, what's that going to look like? Like, how is my life going to be now? And meanwhile, there's like, you skipped like 8,000 steps.
Well, I mean, I think there's two things. I mean, the first is that it's a coping with scary mechanism, right?
Yeah.
So you can either cope with scary by saying it's not scary, or you can just, let's get it over with. It's scary. It's going to go here. And then if it doesn't
go going here anyway, we might as well just pull off the Band-Aid.
Correct. And I think if someone would have just spent the time with me saying, hey, Chaim, listen, the way I speak to young people now when they're getting married, which is you're going to have ups and downs.
Yeah.
You're not going to agree with your spouse on every issue at every moment. And that's okay as long as you have this, respect and dignity and you treat each other that way. It's one of the reasons why Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, I read that one of the reasons Moshe Rabbeinu, when God spoke to him at the burning bush, God said, take off your shoes. Because to be a leader of the Jewish people, you have to be able to feel the debris that's on the ground. Otherwise, you become too aloof. And in a marriage, in a similar way, you have to be able to walk barefoot and feel what your spouse is feeling and recognize that, yes, you may have done something wrong. Doesn't mean you're going to get divorced.
Right. I get why it's hard to talk about because everyone's marriage is so unique and has such unique layers to them. And the dynamics between two people are always so different. And I think it's a fine line between like, what's that called when you impose, but like not impose, but it's like you share what's true for you and you share like that's the reality. But I think there's a way to share basic navigation marriage tools without projecting. That's the word I was looking for. Projecting your reality onto somebody else. And the truth of the matter is, right? Like, as we know, there are marriages that don't work, right? And here's my famous and at the same time, there are so many tools that I think aren't as known or aren't as like utilized, and it leaves a lot of people feeling lost in their marriages.
I mean, I think about it not often, but I do think about it. I went to Cleveland and I studied with Rabbi Chaim for a week before our wedding, and he was cute. He took us to the mall and told us all to buy our kala, our brides, a gift, and we did, and we got it engraved.
I think I got a jewelry box with my name on it.
But the majority of the time was spent on learning halacha, which is important. But what if they had a program for 2 weeks where you spent a week learning with a rav and a rabbi about the halacha, and then a week learning about the sort of with maybe a therapist, maybe with a good mentor,
marriage
maybe
coach.
With I don't know, a Simon Jacobson, a Manas Friedman, a Chase Taub, someone that can give you the crash course. And then same thing for the brides, for the collars. And I do think there's another component in the catastrophizing of things, the way I did it. I do that not only with thinking, oh my gosh, if we're in a fight, we're going to get divorced. Oh my gosh. I catastrophize about a lot of things.
Right. That's anxiety brain, right? I feel like.
Yeah, but for example, I don't think most people, I don't know, but I don't think most people, you certainly don't think about death as much as I do.
I don't think about death at all. You think about death all the time. But I think that also is circumstantial for you as well. I mean, you lost your mother pretty young. Death doesn't cross my mind ever. And you wake up every morning thinking like, wow, it's so great that I'm alive. I should be dead. Literally.
Well, the plus of that is that you're always grateful for being alive. The downside
that is really hard for me to wrap my brain around. Like it's extreme, right?
But the downside is you don't want to be on the road saying, oh my gosh, if I crash today, it's not a good day to die.
Well, that,
You know, it's
that's what you think. That's how you think, though, right?
so I said earlier that I'm a mama's boy.
Yeah.
And I have a wonderful, amazing relationship with my father. I not only as a son, but as a personal secretary and assistant and a virtual assistant.
Yep.
I speak to him and FaceTime with him every single day. I respect him in so many ways. I love him. But until my mother died when I was 29, I was a mama's boy.
Mm-hmm.
And I still am a mama's boy. My mother was my go-to person, and my bubby was my go-to person. So two females in my life that I had an incredibly close relationship with. I actually carried it as a badge of honor to be called a mama's boy by some of my friends.
You never felt weird about it.
Not at all. I mean, I used to stand at the payphone at the yeshiva. I'm not going to mention which yeshiva, and I'm not going to mention which friend. If they're listening, they should listen closely. And every morning at 9 o'clock after Shachris, I would make that phone call from the payphone to my mother. And I still remember one of my close friends walking by and sort of whispering and saying, "Mama's boy." I was like, whatever. I carry it as a badge of honor. You should be so lucky to have a mother like mine. I felt very, very,
right.
I felt so blessed. And then she died on me. She suffered in incredible ways with cancer. And my guide, my mentor, my everything died. And there's no way to undo that. Therapy can help, but you never stop missing someone that, right? And I
think for a long time, I mean, first of all, I got to know your mother for 4 years.
Approximately.
Maybe a little bit more than 4 years.
No, she passed away in 2010, and maybe 4.5 years.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm so grateful that I got to know her, because what I did get to know was pretty amazing. But I do think that for many, many, many years, I think there was, like, you didn't allow yourself to grieve necessarily. Does that make sense? Like, obviously, the week of and the Shiva, whatever, there was that. But you came right back to Montana and you kind of got right back into life. And life was big. We had 2 little babies. We had just adopted 2 kids within a year. And ZC was 2 months old when your mother passed away. And you kind of just put one foot in front of the next and moved forward.
Yeah, I mean, it was almost 12 and a half or 13 years after my mother passed away. And then one day I found myself in this deep sorrow about my mother not being here. And it kind of freaked me out. Like, what is this? I mean, 12 and a half, 13 years later. I mean, who wakes up 13 years later? And I asked my therapist about it. Yeah. And what they told me was, again, it's not science. It's not proven. Right. It was just an observation.
Right.
That
when she knows you.
I was so busy. I was so busy creating a family and being a father and being a husband and being a shliach and catering to my community. And when things finally got to some level of calm, right? Everything's relative.
I was going to say, what calm are you feeling? Please.
No, I mean, some level of calm here.
Yeah.
Where the
you weren't in actual crisis mode.
Correct. There was less of the crisis modes, the crises, and I finally had an opportunity to really grieve. And I think in some way I still am.
Yeah, 100%. And you didn't want to tell me, remember? You were like, this is so weird. And I'm not even, because I noticed something and it took you a while to tell me, like, I think I'm grieving my mother.
And I think that, there's 2 types of children. And again, I'm being black and white here. There's the children who grieve because they feel that they didn't show up for their parent when their parent was alive. So it's a grieving with a lot of regret. And then there's what I'm experiencing. I have no regret. I was there for my mother. I spoke to my mother every single day. And I didn't live in New York, obviously, so my sisters and my brothers at some point, but my sisters really did the brunt with my father, the brunt of the hard work, especially when she was sick for so long. And I always have a deep gratitude to them for having to deal with that and showing up in a way when I couldn't because I was thousands of miles away.
Yeah.
The grief for me is someone that I miss dearly. And it really, really sucks to miss someone and know that until Mashiach comes, you ain't going to see them again, and that you want them to meet your kids and you want your kids to meet them. You want them, I mean, like my niece had a baby, so you just think if my mother was here, she'd be dancing with, she'd be at the bris of her great-grandson. And instead she has to look from heaven. And that's a reality that's very, very hard to swallow.
Yeah.
And as a mama's boy who is so close to her, it makes it harder. So there's a downside to being I always say jokingly that there's a downside to being so close to your parent. That is, if they drop dead at a very young age, you have a long life to follow where you're coping with a very, very sad reality and learning how to cope and deal with that and sort of live in the way that they want you to live. I mean, I once flew, she was upset at me, my mother, because she always liked me to be home for the holidays, but I was always running around the world.
Mm-hmm.
So one Sukkot, she was giving me some grief about being in Oklahoma. So on Chol Hamoed, in the intermediate days, I got on a plane, flew to New York, took her to Manhattan to have lunch at America's Most Favorite Desserts in the sukkah in the rain, and the next night flew back to Oklahoma. But I loved and love her, and I consider her my primary mentor for all things good. All the bad things come from other places. All the good things come from her.
Of course.
And I miss her a lot, and
Yeah.
that will never change.
I mean, and I think that makes sense. I don't think it should. If you weren't functioning because of the grief, then that's a challenge. But missing her in your life every day and living your life, I think that's kind of how it goes.
And even if I wanted to not live my life, again, if you're a mama's boy, you got to do what mama wants. And mama wants you to live your life. So it's almost like she doesn't let me. She doesn't allow me to sort of use her as the excuse for not being productive and functioning. And it was devastating watching my bubby bury her daughter.
Yeah.
My grandparents. My grandfather was a little checked out a little bit with dementia, but my bubby really internalized the
of course,
the grief of that, and it's something that, again, I think it's the one downside of having a very close family is that you really, really grieve the ones you lose.
Yeah, I would say that losing a family member, whether you're close or not, each comes with its baggage, right? Like, there's no good or easier way that happens. I think if, like you said, if you didn't have a close relationship, then there's all the baggage that brings. And I just think losing a parent at that age, losing anybody, but losing a parent at that age is truly life-changing and actually has a very, very, very deep, deep, deep effect on your life in a big way, whether you recognize it or not. I think that's my experience.
I mean, think about it. I mean, I always say that I'm very blessed that, no matter what challenge lands in our lap, I tend not to just turn to God and blame it on him. It's not my thing. I mean, I have a lot of questions for God, but I'm not one of these people that every time something goes wrong in your life, you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe God,
Mm-hmm.
But the one time that I really struggled with my relationship with Hashem,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a very short-lived thing, but was at my mother's funeral.
Mm-hmm.
I was sitting there in a freezing cold December day in New York.
So cold, yeah.
I still have it out for my mother. She couldn't die in the spring. It would be a little nicer outside,
Yeah.
But we were standing outside, and you get to this part of the prayer when you're lowering the casket into the grave, and you say it's called Tziduk Hadin, justifying the judgment. I'm like, hell no. I'm not justifying no judgment. You want to justify God? You can justify what you just did. I'm not in. I still remember my father's elbow that came, I don't know, 30 miles an hour straight into my side of my, into my abdomen.
Yeah.
He's like, Zog, you better start saying it. So I said it to make him happy. I wasn't interested in messing with him, but that's not where my heart was. I was very angry.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was a moment. It was a moment. I always say, if you're a healthy human being, you're going to have at least a moment of agnosticism somewhere along the way where you're questioning God. It doesn't make you a bad person. It just makes you a human being with a beating heart that's struggling.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my biggest struggle is going through that process of losing someone so close to you. And I agree with you. I think everyone, when they lose a close relative, a parent, or God forbid, a child, there's no official way of how to mourn.
Yeah, there's no easier or harder way, or easier or harder circumstances that kind of surround that. But like I said, like I got to meet your mother, and it was definitely like quite an experience to be married to a mama's boy. I had to now compete for.
Tell me more.
I think we've spoken about it, but not in a very extreme way. But it was, sometimes I was like, wait a second, like, whose opinion is being valued in this moment?
My mother's.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, I mean, I knew her for 24 years before you. I mean, she was suddenly you're going to swoop in and take away my mother, right?
Yeah.
It's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's a good thing that you were trained by good parents how to navigate that without it creating too much chaos.
No, I don't remember it being like a big issue at all. I don't remember it being I don't think any of our fights were ever, or arguments were ever surrounding that. It was noticeable, right? It was like, I'm not the first and foremost woman in your life. But back to our early years of marriage. So we lived in Crown Heights for a year. We lived right down the block from your parents. And I actually loved it. We went for dinner every night. I know your sisters have, like, we made dinner. Your mother wanted us for dinner every single night, which was great.
Except she was sick.
Except that she was sick and she wasn't cooking and your sisters were cooking. And I was working 3 jobs. So like I was okay with going for dinner, like once in a while we made dinner, but we were newly married. I was working 3 jobs. We lived down the block. And the point was that she wanted us really close. She wanted you close. She knew that you were going to move on shlichus. She knew that she wasn't well.
She wasn't happy. I mean, it was
that we were moving.
Bag. Yeah. She would have really, really liked us to move somewhere like in New Jersey or Pennsylvania that was driving distance. She said to me at that one point, you may remember, you can't move somewhere that I can go for Shabbos, that I can drive over. And I jokingly said, Ma, they're offering me Vietnam or Montana. And she's like, okay, go to Montana. It's right. It was hard for her for especially because we had that year being down the block, to move away to the other side of the world was very hard.
I really appreciate and value that time that we did have. And I thank your sisters for cooking us dinner every night. But we ended up being in Crown Heights for a year. Then we moved 1 year later on shlichus to Montana. And then we started the infertility journey that we have, and that what most people know us for, because we share our story in public, obviously not details and not, private things stay private. But I always wonder, like, I know, like I speak about my journey in fertility, and I speak about going from getting a permanent infertility diagnosis to the process of adoption. And I know how it felt for me. And of course, we've talked about it, but I am curious to know, like, what that process was for you as a male, getting permanent infertility diagnosis as a couple and navigating that.
Well, I think first and foremost, it's important if we're going to touch on infertility, is that there's a lot of pre-notions out there. Right? Mm-hmm. For example, every time you hear about a couple with infertility, at least the way it used to be, was that everyone assumed it was female infertility, right? I'm sure you've experienced that too, that everyone assumes.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
And I think assuming anything about another couple is really off limits, meaning why do you have to assume anything? Like, what does it matter to you on the outside what the real situation is? But today, in today's day and age, I mean, you speak to the people at Bozeman, speak to the people at a time, you'll find out that male and female infertility, I don't know if it's 50-50, but there's a lot of male infertility as well. It's not just female.
And there's a lot of reasons for infertility. I think it's more rare to have permanent infertility. That's definitely more rare than struggling with infertility for years, right? Like having a permanent infertility diagnosis and so young is not so common.
Well, it's getting more common because the medical advancements go both ways.
Right.
It allows for more treatments available, but it also allows for earlier diagnosis, and the reality way sooner, which it's better than spending 12 years fighting to have a baby when in reality it was already predestined that wasn't going to happen.
Right.
But I think there's a lot of like, did they do IVF? Every time you hear someone had twins, you assume they did IVF. There were twins born before IVF too.
Yeah.
So I think there's just a lot of, and I think it's important for people on the outside not to assume anything about what's really going on in that couple's life. All they want is maybe some empathy. They don't need you to be dissecting their life and figuring that out.
Right.
But I think for me, some people, they struggle with infertility because, oh my gosh, who's going to say Kaddish for me?
I never thought about that, but okay.
Yeah, I mean, people back in Europe, people used to call their sons, I have a little Kaddish that will say Kaddish for me.
Okay.
But I think that for me, the issue with infertility has always been like, it was with a lot of empathy for you, that because I'm not a mother, I would never carry a baby anyhow for 9 months in my womb and then go through the whole child. And then not only did you go through infertility, but somehow you found the inner courage or strength, and you actually enjoy it to show up for when your sister Rachel was giving birth to her first baby and you're there with her. I'm like, what kind of weirdo are you?
Mm-hmm.
Not only are you struggling and you're going, it's so heartbreaking for you, yet you find within yourself to be happy for those that are being blessed with a biological child. But I think for me, and it's something I live with every day, and I think that, is that for me, the biggest challenge is that, that the woman I'm married to will never have that experience, at least according to the laws of nature today. Short of a miracle, I mean, you could have a baby at 45. I mean, you never know where that goes.
Okay.
At 52, those tabloid stories, 77, whatever.
Yeah, no thanks.
Hashem does miracles. But I think for me, and it's funny because it's my own observation. It's not like you give that off. It's just my internalization of like,
yeah,
I'm married to a woman who's not going to have that experience, and how devastating that must be. And where do I fit into that? And how do I live with that? How do I be there for her? It's complicated stuff. And
yeah, because I mean, everyone's navigating their own grief, but also it's not like your own personal thing as well. Like, it's a very unique circumstance where you're navigating your own grief, but it's very much tied to the person you're married to. And it takes time to figure out how to show up for the other person while you're also in that same space, but maybe feeling differently about it or processing it differently.
And I think for me, I mean, when I last week's parsha, when Rachel Imenu when Rachel says to Yaakov, if I don't have a child, it's like I'm dead. And he's like, what are you talking to me? I'm not God.
Right.
And the Mefarshim, the commentators talk about that. I mean, that's a response. Your wife is complaining that she's experiencing infertility and she can't have children, and her sister's having a baby, Leah, and you can't show some empathy. But I think we are very blessed because we've become, over the last 17 years, or 16 years, we've become sort of the phone number that people call about infertility. And one of the themes that I see all the time, or too much, I should say, is where the parents and the in-laws are not showing up for the young couple in the ways that they should.
Yeah.
And we were so blessed.
Seriously,
that your parents,
I think about that all the time. Both your parents and my parents, both of our parents were hugely supportive.
So my parents were very, very empathetic. But your parents,
they didn't necessarily like all the choices that we made.
No, and they welcomed the choices, but I think that your father in particular, from day one, knew how to say the right, he not just show up and be there with love and empathy, but say things with clarity. Mm. And the clarity was very helpful for us to find some clarity about where we're going to go in our journey. And your father and I are very, very different people. Mm-hmm. We do not act or see the world very much in the same way, but I will forever be grateful to him in those harshest moments. Right. Until today, when we have a harsh moment, he somehow knows how to say the right thing.
Yeah. Well, you're very, very close with my father. You're not, you don't see things eye to eye a lot in very many different places, but you've always had a very beautiful relationship.
I'm very close with your dad. My point is that in the way we operate, we're just different style, personality people.
Yeah, for sure.
And for me to be able to see how blessed I am to have a figure in my life who is not even our family mentor, because it would be, we have a mentor.
Not objective enough.
Correct. And he's able to sort of have clarity in the craziest moments.
Right.
I mean, think about that. Your daughter and son-in-law, it's your oldest daughter. They're coming out of a medical facility with a diagnosis that's permanent. And instead of crying or bemoaning or kvetching, oi and oi, or saying false things like false hope.
Yeah.
He was like, oh.
Well, he had a lot of empathy.
Right. But he also said there must be children in this world that we're meant to raise. And think about that in that moment, for a father of a couple to say that.
Yeah.
It takes a level of clarity that's not, it should not, I don't take it for granted.
For sure. People ask me all the time, like, is your family supportive, through the adoptions and through, we've done some really out there things. And
we
and I think we have been both very blessed with each, kind of in their different ways and their unique personalities and perspectives, but we have been supported by my family and by your family, and we were never made to feel like we're crazy.
Not only not made to feel like we're crazy, like I always say, you said it yourself just now, the families show up in different ways.
Yeah.
And I guess there's moments that you need each of those kinds of showing up.
For sure.
But like my older brother, Yechanan, who's a piece of work, and I'm saying it on a podcast because he is, and anyone that knows him knows that he is, he's, the conversations are short. I hear dial tones before I finish talking. It's just this weird kind of dynamic, short and sweet and boom, bam, bam, but showing up for me when I needed him most in a heartbeat. He'd take a bullet for me.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, knowing that on most days is a very powerful thing. Some days, you do want the mushy empathy and the Brooks. That's not our thing.
Leave that to the blocks.
No, if you need something mushy, call 1-800-BLOCK and you'll get something mushy. The Brooks, and it's hard sometimes because you want that. Sometimes I desperately want my own siblings who I love dearly to show up that way. And then I realize, hold on, I can barely show up that way after 8 years of therapy. Mm-hmm. How do you expect them just to show up that way?
Mm-hmm.
But when push comes to shove, they show up, and it's something that I'm eternally grateful for. And yeah, you're right. I mean, we live a life primarily out of the box.
Yeah.
And most families, or I shouldn't say most, but many families, especially families that are from the box, do not know how to deal with those that jumped out of it.
And which is very interesting because you are very much in the box type of person. You're very much in the box type of person, and you're leading a life that is very out of the box. So is it just because you were forced to? I mean, I was always a little bit more out of the box. I'm not the most out of the box person in the world, but I always did my own. I always kind of had that. I don't know.
I don't know how to put my finger on exactly how it happened and why it happened. Maybe Hashem orchestrated life that way, but I've had more than one friend. I have a friend who's not conventionally religious, a dear friend of mine, Mendy Pekarsky, and I could say his name because we're friends, we're lifelong friends. And he once said, like, I don't remember the exact words, but it was something like, I love watching what you've evolved into.
Yeah.
And almost with this little, and he's not the only one that said that.
Yeah.
Because it is, I mean, for people that knew me when I was younger and I was this tough, extreme bulldozer / a little bully, it came with the turf. Mm-hmm. You believe in something and you're the other side of it. I got to be the bulldozer. Mm-hmm. And it's not a healthy place to be. It's not a good place to be. It doesn't really make other people feel good. It doesn't allow for healthy relationships. And so it's interesting to see how out of the box. And again, I always think that the box now, when I look at the box, I'm like, I don't want other people defining what the box is. There's only God, and in my case, the Rebbe and Chabad Hasidic philosophy that should guide my life. What random people's opinions, of course it bothers you when people say things because you're a human being. Yeah. But that shouldn't define who you are. And just because someone said that, people say, oh my gosh, you don't wear a white shirt. Like I said, they called me about a shidduch question about a man. Does he wear a white shirt? I'm like, did you ever look at the pictures of 770 in the 1970s? You couldn't find a white shirt if you had a flashlight. Guys wore a blue shirt. So I think we've gotten so sort of boxed in.
Confused about the priorities.
And then if you're boxed into those so-called priorities, which are man-made, if someone leaves those priorities, like, oh my gosh, he's out of the box, but am I really out of the box?
Yeah.
Would the Rebbe consider me out of the box? I don't think so.
Well, I talk about this all the time, and I actually wrote about it in the article that I wrote for Gimel Tammuz, and I think we had it in our newsletter maybe. Yeah. And I remember really struggling with writing about the Rebbe because the Rebbe is so much a part of my life, but I didn't have the experience like you. I don't have the tangible memories and energetic feelings of that. I grew up in Texas. So it was hard to kind of pinpoint how the Rebbe is so present in my life. And what I ended up realizing by being forced to write this article is that whenever I am unsure or whenever I find myself leaning towards judgment, whether it's with myself or with my kids or parenting or larger community-wise, I always ask myself, like, what would the Rebbe say to do? What would the Rebbe say? And every single time I can be 100% sure that the Rebbe would say more love, more care, more empathy, more embracing, right? Like the Rebbe never said, don't love or cut off. That was never the message. And so it's such a powerful message for me in my life, because sometimes we do revert to judgment and we do revert to black and white, and we do revert to like, if this person isn't following my boundaries or my whatever, then we have to put up the walls. And I constantly remind myself that the Rebbe's message was the exact opposite. And so that's really helped me a lot in my life to let go of so much judgment and expectations, because I think at the end of the day, we have our relationships and we have, I don't know, I just feel like at the end of the day, that's what it's about.
It's interesting. Just this morning, I have a chavrusa I learn with him in Pittsburgh every Wednesday, and we learn letters from the Rebbe. There's a letter from 1952. And the Rebbe says, I was terribly sad to hear about your daughter. And the Rebbe goes on to say that basically the daughter was dating a non-Jew. And the Rebbe says, I don't understand why you waited. The minute she started dating the non-Jew, you should have hired, there was some kind of matchmaking organization. You should have got them involved to try to find her a Jewish guy. You should have got her friends to talk to her about how severe this is. But then the Rebbe says something powerful. He's talking about how pained he was by hearing about it. Then he says, do not engage in arguments with your daughter about her decision.
Mm-hmm.
Why? The Rebbe says, because it will only enrage her more and make her more adamant about her decision to go against you. You have to make sure she knows where you stand in principle about her choices, but don't engage. And the word the Rebbe says, machloikesim, having debates. So here's the Rebbe who's training someone how to deal with their own daughter. Yes, principle, no arguing, no kvetching.
And still accepting and loving, right? Like,
correct. It was
not
never
pushing away.
Don't ever talk to her again.
Right.
Or don't ever.
Yeah.
But there's another part. I was talking to my friend Chesky yesterday, and we were talking about Rabbi Yehuda Krinsky, the Rebbe's personal secretary, who I share a birthday with next week, the 15th of Kislev. I don't know when this recording is going to be out, but today's my secular birthday,
exactly, December 11th.
It's my Facebook birthday.
43, right? 43.
Yeah.
I'm telling everybody.
No problem. And then next week Rabbi Krinsky and I share a birthday. He's turning 91, God willing. And I said to Chesky, it's interesting. I've known Rabbi Krinsky for, 25 years. And I've spoken to him hundreds of times. Not once in my life have I heard him say something negative about any other human being, which is a fascinating thing to think of. Because normally you talk about this one, you talk about that. He's never talked to me about a third party with a negative connotation ever. Think about, and that's that. When I see that, I see someone that was trained truly.
Yeah, at the foot of the Rebbe.
Correct. And the Rebbe, and so, I always say you can judge the good things that Hasidim do by the Rebbe that trained them, but don't judge everything Hasidim do. Don't blame everything Hasidim do on the Rebbe, because the Rebbe wasn't that. The Rebbe was a person of love and understanding. And my question to me about my box, in the box or out of the box, is not whether so-and-so approves of it. It's what would the Rebbe say about that? And that's all that really matters.
And I think that's really how we came to a lot of our decisions in our life. And I want to circle back to that mentor thing, because that has allowed us to be out of the box. When you have the right guidance and you're within a structure that you hold dear and believe in, there's room to be out of the box, right? Within the structure. But if you don't have the ability to ask the questions and you think you know all the answers because of what you've studied and what you've learned, and this is right and this is wrong, then you stay in the box. But because you have the ability to look to mentors, to people who have the information, who know more than you, and you are able to do things out of the box, and which we've done. We've done a lot of things out of the box, from having a dog, from taking our kids to public school, from, navigating a lot of different areas of our life. And one story really sticks out to me as a really, it just was a really powerful story. And I don't know, maybe we'll have to take it out, but I'm going to say it and then we'll decide. But it's a good story. And it has to do with our mentor. And we had a situation where it was kind of crazy and like so shocking to us, but we found out that one of our kids was eating chametz on Pesach and was going into the closed freezer. And I think it was like Hamantashen, right? Like old Hamantashen. And we were beside ourselves, right? Like this is not a little thing. Chametz on Pesach is not like a little thing. And
it was a kid under bar mitzvah.
Yes, correct. And
under bar bat mitzvah.
And you're the one that discovered it. And I'm extremely impressed and grateful with how you handled it. You really didn't turn it into anything at all. But after Pesach, I remember we were like, what do we do? Right? Like we're the parents, we're responsible. The child is under bar bas mitzvah, so they aren't responsible. We're responsible for that. And I remember he said something so powerful that it never would have crossed my mind. So first he said, okay, like you do your tikkun, right? Like, and I think he gave us whatever we're supposed to do for rectifying that energy that was brought into the world because of that deed. But he said something so basic, but you need someone so in tune and smart to be able to say that to you. And he said to us, he's like, he's hungry. He's not satisfied with what the choices you have on Pesach. Better you should have all the packaged Pesach snacks and he eat those than him having to go look for snacks because there's not enough. Fruits and vegetables is obviously not cutting it for him. And I didn't think we were always so very extreme. We never had processed items growing up. So it was like so normal. Like we have yogurts and we did chocolate and ladyfingers. But everything else was fruits and vegetables and not processed. And it was a very powerful lesson. I was like, okay, just because you grew up that way doesn't mean it's working for your family, but also like think out of the box. Like get the potato chips, get the whatever. And that way you're meeting your child where they're at and they're feeling like they can participate and do it in a way that works. And honestly, like I think back and I'm like, why didn't I think of that myself? But it just didn't cross my mind because I thought everything was like we were doing it the right way, and it's like 8 days of Pesach. Like this is what's available. Like we make do. Like we don't need I had all this narrative, right? Like we don't need the snacks and and I'm like, well, obviously we do, right? And from then on, we don't go crazy, but we do have snacks for them. They also go to school, so it's good for them to have snacks. And that was like a really wise. I feel like it was a wise way to approach that struggle.
And I think that really you nailed it on the head because it's not like when we talk about out of the box, we ever, God forbid, our Chabad and our home, even our Chabad is the highest standards of halacha. We never compromise on halacha. That's not negotiable. Right. We never compromise on Chabad philosophy.
Right.
Even the Talesim in our Shul are all about Talesim. We are very, very almost an extreme. That part of my extremism is still there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in the nuance of things that could be confusing, right? It's our minute. We both grew up with not having major snacks on Pesach.
Yeah.
Fruits and vegetables and fish and meat. And for our mentor to be able to, without flinching, say, this is the issue. If you're going to give the kids snacks on Pesach, you're going to solve the problem of them trying to find their own snacks, which are problematic.
Right.
Was eye-opening, but it was also reassuring. That goes back to such an important key point, which is that every couple needs to have a mentor because it really, it saves us from these.
I mean, could you imagine if we were trying to navigate that on our own and how much anxiety or fear would have been surrounding that conversation because we wouldn't know what we were supposed to do. And I'm so grateful for having that ability, that clarity to move through. And this is a drop in the bucket. This is one of the many zillion situations we've had that we've been able to lean on a mentor for. So the last thing I kind of want to touch upon, and I know I say this almost at the end of every podcast, like, oh, we can go on forever, but you are my husband, so we really could go on forever. So we are going to have to end, or else we will be here forever. But I do want to touch upon this idea, and we've touched upon it even in this conversation. But I think just spending a little bit of time in the concept of therapy in our marriage and in our personal lives, and what impact that had in our growth, right? As the individual person, as a parent, as a spouse, and as community leaders. I feel like therapy has helped me in all the areas of my life. And talking about marriage and how we wish or we hope that there was more, there would be more information out there for people to navigate struggles in a marriage. I also think like personal therapy, I don't feel like there's that much stigma around anymore. I feel like we've really broken out of that boundary of people going to therapy personally as not weird, as not problematic. Doesn't mean you're crazy, doesn't mean you're weird, doesn't mean you have a problem. I do still think that marriage therapy still very much has a stigma of like, oh, you're having problems, or your marriage you can't navigate marriage on your own, so you need a therapist to help you. And I still think there are some innate, inherent biases and narratives around marriage therapy. So how do you feel about going there with me for a minute?
I'm not scared to talk about marriage therapy, because the only reason you would be scared about talking about marriage therapy is if you're worried about the stigma that someone thinks your marriage is not okay.
Right.
And I honestly, the people that know me know that that's not true. And the people that don't know me, have your fun, enjoy yourself.
Remember what happened like 2 years ago to me?
No.
Remember when I was like posted on Instagram something like, you can't always be on the same page as your husband. It's okay not to be okay about it.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, talk about the WhatsApp chats that were happening. And oh my gosh, are you okay? I was so caught off guard. I was so unaware that I even said anything controversial. I was like, what do you mean? Are you always on the same page as your husband? Like, I was so not, like, I had no idea that this was a thing,
Like, just think about it. If someone's sitting in Brooklyn right now discussing whether me and you are on the verge of divorce because we go to marriage therapy, so sorry to break it to you. Marriage therapy is not about saving couples from divorce, although it does do that sometimes as well.
Yeah.
Marriage therapy is about a couple that recognizes that the immense burden in their life, and not everyone has that.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have a much simpler life, but when you're running a Chabad house and there's incredible financial challenges, time challenges, you have kids that have unique needs, and you have to figure out how to parent on the same page. Having a therapist who can guide you to see the spouse's perspective and how it's landing for them when you say X, Y, and Z, it has been an incredible bracha. It's been an incredible blessing. So for the people in Brooklyn that want to think that means we're getting divorced, have it your way. I'll see you in 30 years when I'm still married, and sorry to break your bubble, bust your bubble.
Right.
But for the few couples that may get from this, that maybe they too can go to marriage therapy, it's worth it.
Because
living in the same home, in the same bedroom, in the same life with someone who you can't stand because everything they say you see as a negative, because you're in your own negative space and they're in their own negative space, and you're missing each other. You keep missing each other in the process. Is not a fun place to be. So if you work on it and you find, again, it has to be a good marriage therapist. They're not all good.
Right. And they all don't, you have to find the one that works for you.
And I have to say it straight up. For years, I would tell you, and you'd say we should see a marriage therapist. I'm like, you're crazy. Why would you go to a marriage therapist?
Mm-hmm.
But I also said that to you when you thought I should go to therapy in general.
Mm-hmm. It takes time for you to embrace ideas that I have.
Yes, it does. And I think that, I look back at my therapeutic journey, and I always crack up with humor from people who think that, oh, I learned Tanya and I learned Chassidus, and therefore I don't need a therapist. Maybe you don't need a therapist. I don't know that every human being needs a therapist. What I do know is that when it comes to mental health and emotional health, sure, Tanya could guide a healthy human being.
A healthy person.
Correct.
Yes.
To make the right choices. But if there's no person there, because either you see yourself as a shmata, or you're being made to feel that way, or you have your own internal challenges, a very dark side to your existence. And I think a friend of mine, Rabbi Barry Farker, spoke about this elsewhere, about this idea that Tanya could guide fairly healthy human beings with healthy temptations, with healthy challenges, but unhealthy darkness
Well, the Tanya says straight out, you have to seek health, mental health, physical health, right? Like that's an important prerequisite to your service of Hashem.
For sure. And it's like, I don't battle it because it's not my field of expertise. I'm not interested in convincing someone that thinks they don't need therapy, that they should go to
100%.
therapy. But if someone's struggling to internalize Tanya, so when I wake up in the morning every day at 5 and I'm learning a Hasidic discourse from 1958 and I'm trying to internalize it and understand, there is no question in my mind that the Rebbe's guidance in those discourses, the Hasidic ideas, the ideas of meditation and thoughtfulness and overcoming temptation and overcoming instinct, all of that is guided to in a much healthier way by having a therapeutic journey, which allows you to remove so many of those unnecessary obstacles that have been keeping you bogged down for all those years. And you honestly, half the time, didn't even know what it was really about. Mm-hmm. And it turns out it's been very real and it's really been holding you back. And so each to their own. But if someone's struggling and they can't seem to find the answer in Tanya, my recommendation is find a good Tanya teacher like Chavie Bruk and find a great therapist. And find a great therapist.
Well, yeah, I think, first of all, we both have had our personal growth and journeys and ups and downs through our own struggles, which we all have to work on ourselves as a human. But together as a couple, we have a lot on our plate. We also work together and everything we do is together. And that is hard to navigate sometimes. And I also think that when you recognize and realize that you come to every conversation and you come to every experience or circumstance, we all have our history screens. We all have our narratives. We all have the things that are ingrained in us. And when we're entering something that's triggering or more sensitive, and we recognize where those things are coming from, like so much of what we spent time doing, it's really interesting because you think you go to marriage counseling and you like sit and you dissect an argument and you each say your point and
then there's a referee.
But it really was never about that. She never let us get into the argument because she wasn't about that. It's like, well, what's behind that? And we started to learn so much more about ourselves and I don't want to say triggers, but the things that are sensitive in our hearts, the things that we each have sensitivities, we each have, and everything's also so layered. A common thing to have arguments around is about money. And it's about money, but it's really about what we hold of value, how we feel valued, right? And so being able to strip those layers and really get to the core of why, it's always about why do we do the things that we do and why do we feel the way we feel. And once we give space and room for that, it doesn't mean it's perfect. Like we still get into plenty of arguments all the time, but I think there's a difference in, first of all, being able to put it on hold and then revisit. That was always my struggle. Like I always wanted to solve it right away. And you always put the walls up. So that was a very difficult dynamic. But on my end, learning to like, it's okay. So we're going to go to bed and it's not going to be resolved. Learning that that's okay. And then for you, learning that we need to revisit it. And a lot of times that's hard because you're like, I don't have patience or time to pick this apart. Like I don't want to. But I just think that there's a lot of value. And I think for us, it's extremely necessary to have, I look at it as part of the village, right? As one of the supports that we have. I look at my personal therapy as a support. I look at our marriage therapy as a support. I look at our children's supports as support. And I look at the spiritual things that we do as support, but they're each part of a very big macrocosm of how to keep operating in a healthy way.
And again, I mean, God bless the minority of people who somehow have it all figured out, or at least
I believe that there are people who don't need it. I do believe that, but I do think the majority of us have conflict in marriage and sometimes don't always know how to navigate it because there's all the things that are coming at the front and we don't really get to like what's up behind, you know?
I mean, listen, you could. I just mentioned earlier about Rachel and Yaakov, and I can go to Avram and Sarah kicking out Yishmael. I can go to Yitzchak and Rivka. I go to Moshe and Tzipora. I mean, which story biblical? Amram and Yocheved getting divorced before they got remarried. I mean, the reality is that marriages are complicated by creation. Adam and Chava. the first husband in life, we're already blaming each other for who's at fault for eating from the tree.
So true.
And I think, when I say those that have it all figured out, I mean, if you have all the money that you need and you have all the perfect children that you want and you're married to Cinderella and everything's working out.
And you're healthy and
then by all means. But based on the phone calls I get for the different work that I do in different realms of helping people that have health issues and helping people that have adoption and fertility issues, there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of struggle in the world. And to see it, like you said, as one of the additional, for me personally, money is definitely guided by the fact that my father, for 10 years of my childhood, was very successful in business. And then the market for jewelry took a big nosedive down. And I watched my parents struggle immensely financially for at least a decade.
Yeah.
And that guides you to a fear of what it's like if you don't have money. So the funny thing about, and you know this, is that even if there's money in the bank, what am I worried about? That there won't be money soon, because I know what that looks like. And I don't consciously say, oh, let me be worried because my father struggled financially and my mother had to go back to work as a teacher in Beis Rivka to help pay for tuition. I don't do that consciously, but subconsciously, that's definitely one of the things that guides
your fear,
how I see things. And so for us and for many like us, therapy, both marriage and personal therapy, is an incredible asset in addition to the volumes of depth and value that we find in Torah and Chassidus. I don't ever see therapy
as a contradiction.
Not only that, I mean, someone asked me once, so how do you make sure your therapist doesn't guide you away from Torah? I'm like, well, for starters, the first time you go, you make it clear, I'm Jewish, I follow a set religion, and I do not want to hear you talk or question or trash my religion ever. I walk out the door and we're done. That kind of introduction, you should be pretty safe.
You should be pretty good, and have a therapist that can handle it. It is really true. And I think people wonder, how do you change from being someone different than you were? Of course, that your personality is still there. Your basic, you are who you are. But we are all put in this world to grow and to tap into the gifts that Hashem gave us and use them. It's so easy to use your gifts for negativity. It's so easy to use the gifts that Hashem gave, your talents, but use them in the wrong way. And I think it would be remiss to say that the therapeutic process that we both have been on hasn't been a huge part of that, the ability for transformation.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that it takes a lot of work. There's a line that in one of my JLI classes that I shared that said, the world thinks that it's our character that guides our action. But sometimes it's our action that guides our character. Meaning if you do something enough times over and over again, you sort of make it your nature.
Yeah.
So some people, but I don't really feel so calm on the inside. How about practice being calm, even if you're not?
Right.
We shared just last night. Manny was screaming at me about something.
Oh, that was so funny.
He was screaming at me about something to do. He wanted to use my phone to play soccer, whatever. And he's screaming at me, and I just answered everything calmly. And he's like, "Why are you so calm? Why are you not?" I said, "Does it bother you that I'm calm?" Yes, it was making him crazy.
The best part of the story is that we're sitting at dinner. So this happened before dinner, and we're sitting at dinner. Every night we go around and we all say what we're grateful for. And it was your turn, and you said you're grateful for certain things of your day. And you said you're grateful for staying calm, right? Didn't you say something like that? You're grateful for staying calm. And Manny's like, "Yep, it worked. It worked." He's like, he's right. It worked. But it's true. And you notice it. And then, but you don't always have access. Like this morning, we weren't able to stay as calm, but we try our best.
I like that. I didn't have access. Yeah, that sounds about right.
We all try.
But yeah, I mean, I do think that anyone that thinks that the change comes easy,
or that it just comes. No, you have to be intentional about it.
I kind of compare it to the fact that the Torah talks and in the Orthodox world, in our frum world, Shmiras HaLashon, right? Oh, every year, every summer in the 9 days, we talk about not speaking Lashon Hara. And yet, I don't know there's a group in the world that talks as much Lashon Hara. Yeah. Why? Because talking about it and claiming that it's easy is one thing, and actually implementing it is a much harder thing. And I think when we study Chassidus and it talks about Moyach Shalat Alev, self-control, inner calm. Getting angry is like serving idols. It sounds like very altruistic, but implementing that takes a lot of work. And I think the work, if you're going to sit around and wait for the internal change to happen before you implement it, you're going to be waiting a long time. If you start implementing it, you'll get more comfortable doing it, and then eventually the calm may follow.
Right, and the journey's never over. I always say, like, as long as you're in this world, you're meant to be growing and doing. And so it's not like you're going to reach a destination where you're finally like, I've made it and I have nothing left to work on, right? Like, no, we're always going to have the things that we want to work on. We're always going to be wishing and hoping we were more patient and a better parents and a better this. But I think if we can say that we're on the journey towards growth, I think that's what matters.
And I think the surrender, when you surrender to the recognition.
Yeah. Surrender is so hard. I feel like that's the hardest thing for me.
Well, I think, but surrendering to the fact that it may not ever be easy.
Yes.
Right?
Oh.
We used to wait. Oh, when is it finally going to be easy?
When is it going to be calm? When is our life going to calm down? When is it going to be this? But that's a hard realization to, like, when Tanya talks about that. I just taught that in the chapter where the Beinoni is like in crisis mode because he realizes, he or she realizes that they're always going to have the struggle, and they're like, and they throw up their hands in the air and like, what's the point? If I'm always going to be in struggle, if I'm always going to have this internal battle, then what's the even point? And the Alter Rebbe goes on to say, like, that's the point, right? And so not that we're supposed to be miserable. The point is not that we're supposed to be miserable, but the point is that we're always going to be in growth. We're always going to have to be battling ourselves. And that's what I've been working on, is this surrender and acceptance of, like, this is how it is. You can't change the challenges that your kids have. You can't change the challenges that you have. You can change your narrative around it. You can change how you feel about it. And it always gets me stuck. That complete acceptance and, like, ultimate surrender of, like, this is how it is. That's where I get stuck. Because I always want to change it. I'm always like, if only I did this, then this would make it better.
But I think the plus side of that is, like, sort of like the mentality of always thinking you're going to die, is that when you're alive, you feel so good. I think that when things are always so challenging and you sort of surrender and realize that it's never going to be easy, I think then when you have a calm and easy day, you feel like you won the lottery.
Yeah, like when Chanalea gets dressed without a whole hullabaloo, like, you think you won the lottery. Very basic. That's all we need.
Correct. And so I think that perspective shift is really, it suddenly makes you be grateful for the small things, not just the big things.
I was literally thinking that yesterday because there was a moment where, like, Cece was learning with her tutor. I don't know. They were all doing their learning somehow. And I was like, wow, oh my goodness, they're doing it for 10 minutes, and it felt really good. And it's because when you have expectations, or when you recognize that life is hard and challenging, when there's moments that you can, that's what my therapist always tells me. He always says to me, he's like, in the moment, you need to pause and let it sink in your body, even if it's just for a minute, even if it's just calm for 5 minutes. Don't just gloss over it. Let your body recognize and feel it, because that's muscle memory. That's what makes us.
Yeah, exactly. You do it more and more, and then you go for the wins. I mean, last night, I think you were probably putting Chanalea to bed while she was watching Living Torah.
Oh, it was Many. Many was doing his learning.
He was learning,
and Zizi was learning. And I'm like, whoa, 2 kids are learning. Woohoo!
Mashiach's coming.
Mashiach is coming, literally. Okay, I need to wrap up with one question. Yeah, it's a little interesting.
No, I'm not losing weight.
What?
I figured it's going to be a weight question. We went through 2 hours without discussing Weight Watchers, Start Fresh, Fit for Life, Atkins, all this good part of my childhood.
I assume you have experience with all of those. It's not a weight question. I think we do have a little bit of a unique dynamics as well, which I do have a pretty public persona, and I put myself out there a lot of Instagram. I do go around speaking. I have a podcast now. And I do think that's, I don't want to say super unusual, but I don't think it's necessarily the norm. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts around that. Because also, especially because you inherently are more private than I am. Like, I'm a sharer. You are also, but very differently. You have a lot more boundaries around your sharing, and also it doesn't come as naturally. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think being married to me made you more of a sharer.
I definitely share. Well, I always shared, but it was always superficial.
Right.
Right. You talked about the weather. You talked about,
Right.
whatever Rush Limbaugh was talking about on the radio. You talked about things that didn't, but personal matters was definitely, I was less of a share. And I do agree with you that I still share less than you do, or at least I want to share less than you do.
Listen, I have a lot of boundaries. I don't share anything that you are not okay with. So I'm just going to put that out there, or the kids.
I think that, not I think, I get a lot of nachas from what you've created and the fact that you genuinely care about people. If you were a superficial social media addict, like where you need to advertise, what boots you're wearing, I think I'd have a lot more issues with it. I think because I've watched over the last decade or so the genuine love-based, authenticity-based, integrity-based sharing where you're genuinely trying to help people. And when they reach out, you don't ignore them like you're some big pop star who has Instagram, so you don't have to, you answer everyone, assuming that they're sane, not some stalkers, but I'm saying you answer everybody that needs your help. You've spent hundreds of hours on the phone talking to help guide people with different situations, whether it's marriage or with kids or with adoption or with infertility or with kids going to youth programs, which we've merited to have on our list of successes. Because it's genuine and because it's real and because it's out to really help people, it's the biggest nachas. I wish every husband has a wife that can be a voice of reason and a voice of godliness and a voice of realness, because the world needs it. If I can say so, I think I was your biggest cheerleader for your Tanya class and getting it onto YouTube and believing that people should be watching it. And I was actually, in addition to that, I still am your personal secretary that sends out your emails and then sends out the Tanya videos from the emails. Like I have nothing going on besides being Chavie, Bruk's personal assistant.
Yeah,
but
correct.
That comes from a place of recognizing that the value you bring to your platforms and to this family and to this community is something not only that I admire because I'm your husband and I'm supposed to say that, but I see the results of it. When I sit at a Shabbos table in Bozeman and women are discussing a Tanya class, quote unquote, women that are not frum are sitting and talking about Tanya and how their soul journey because they study Tanya with Chavie Bruk. That gives me nachas.
Well, I really wasn't fishing for a compliment, but I will take it. Thank you. My experience, which I think I've talked about it before briefly, but it really strikes me because I don't take it for granted, but you always have been my biggest cheerleader. And you have never shown any like competitiveness around successes. And I know it's like, well, I know you think it's crazy, but I do think that happens. It could very easily happen when you're two people who have a public persona and who are doing outreach. Like it could be difficult in a certain way.
Think back to when you started your speaking gig, and I would say we should charge X amount of money to the congregation that's hiring you. And you're like, who's going to pay me that kind of money?
Yeah.
I'm like, if you don't value yourself, I see the value and I have to train you.
Yes, 1,000%. You've always been my biggest cheerleader and my biggest fan, right? And my biggest financial supporter. bankroll all my projects. So I guess I want to take this opportunity to really appreciate that and thank you, because it means everything to have a husband that's confident and secure enough in his own successes that allows me to have mine in a very healthy, beautiful way. So
and I guess, being that we're going down that route, it's mutual, but maybe in a little different way. And that is, I am very blessed to have a wife who wants to see me succeed and therefore is willing to do the hard work of guiding me to make changes because they see the downfall of not having those changes. And in the beginning,
I see you for who you really are.
And you're able to push away and say, I'm sure that's not that persona that you're sharing publicly, we both know is not who you really are. And you're just doing it for this, that, or the other. And it's really helped me get out of some pretty sticky situations, but also keep me away from things that are really not my realm. You're incredible at keeping me humble. And I don't say that.
That can go many different ways.
So that's why I want to clarify. You keep me humble in the most positive way. And the changes that we just spent 2 hours talking about is a direct result of having someone in my life who knows that I'm capable of doing better than I was doing and believed that I was capable of making the changes even in the moments that I thought you were absolutely crazy. I'm never going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, till today, I pinch myself the fact that I go to therapy.
Mm-hmm.
What am I? Who goes to therapy? Crazy people. That's how I grew up. That was the mentality I grew up with. And I am eternally grateful. And I guess that's why, contrary to those who are discussing our marriage therapy, we may not end up in divorce court.
Yeah, I really think we're heading in the right direction. And on that high note, I think we should say goodbye.
Wrap it
up. Thank you so much. I know it's my podcast, but you did take 2.5 hours out of your very busy day to come join me. So thank you so much. And I'm pretty sure we're going to be doing this again.
Okay. For the right price, I'll come back.
Okay. Amazing. Okay, so you have now listened to our episode. I'm really excited to hear some of your feedback, so please send that in. Today is a crazy day. Just giving you life update here for a second. I took Ezzy to get groomed. Always falls out on a recording day. I don't know how that happens, but it does. And then right after I finish recording here, I pick up Cece from school and we head to the airport and I take her to Denver for her medical appointments. All her doctors are in Denver and we are long overdue. There's nothing like a deadline to get you moving. Her meds cannot be refilled. The insurance won't cover, the doctors won't refill her meds until she's seen. So here we are making a little trip. We'll be gone for less than 24 hours. So it's a busy day. But I'm excited to be here and recapping our episode and just being with you guys. I have to tell you like a real life story. So as we're like gearing up to air this episode, it was recorded a few months ago. We're gearing up to air it and we're talking about it with my producer, Ellie, and we're going through what we're going to use as reels and talking about how great the episode was, if we say so ourselves. And I just love how this stuff happens. That week, a day or two later, my husband and I get into a thing. And it's so funny because I just 10 minutes ago, I was talking to Chaim and I was like, are you okay with me sharing that we got into an argument recently in connection to this episode? And he's like, it was not an argument. It was a war. Because it really wasn't an argument. It kind of was a war. We were in war. And obviously the details don't matter, but we definitely got into a place and it was intense and it was difficult. And I do think, Baruch Hashem, something really, really, really good comes out into the world. You have the flip side. It just energetically, we weren't fighting about the episode at all. It was just an energetic thing. And it was rough. It was one of the more intense wars that we've been in a while. And it lasted a few days. And I know that in the episode, we talked about how much marriage therapy has enhanced our marriage, not because it was falling apart, but because we live really intense lives. And navigating life with another person who is their own autonomous being with their own thoughts and their own struggles and their own triggers, like doing that together sometimes could use some help. And somebody who's objective and who can see the bigger picture and who can guide. I mean, I don't have to tell you what marriage therapy is. But interestingly, our marriage therapist had a baby and is not practicing right now indefinitely. Not my favorite thing. You know, when you feel like it's a support and not that it's, oh my gosh, you can't live without it, but it's one of your supports that just ease your anxiety. And it in the beginning, it felt a little scary that she wasn't going to be available in the near future. But I have to say that through this experience, we were working through something deep. And that's why it wasn't like something quick that just passed quickly. We were really uncovering some layers. But I have to say that it took some time. We weren't using our tools right away, that's for sure. The tools were not accessible in the beginning. But as time passed, we were able to pull out the tools that we were taught and we have practiced for a long time and with our therapist, and we were able to implement them without her. So really proud of us. It was hard. I'm not going to lie. It was hard, but we did it. And I think it ties in to the Substack article that I wrote about the recap from the Women's Convention. And I mentioned that one of the highlights for me was Rabbi YY Yossi Jacobson's Farbrengen that happened Thursday night, ended at 1:30 in the morning. And he was talking all about this alignment and finding your soul's peace and your relationship with Hashem and the relationship with the people in your lives so you can be totally aligned. And only then can you show up for other people. And really, truly, only then are you really in service of Hashem. Because if we're so distracted by all of our anxieties and all of our struggles and all of our overwhelm, chances are we're not super focused on our relationship with God, our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with what we're supposed to be doing in this world. And I really felt that this little hiccup that my husband and I had was getting to another layer of alignment between us. It just brought things to another level. And sometimes I'm like, well, why does it have to happen this way? It was so hard, but it has to happen that way. There's no really other way to get deeper without the tension and without the conflict necessarily that allows you to go even deeper and find alignment between ourselves so we can enhance our relationship. And then in turn, that enhances how we show up in the world, how we show up for our family, how we show up for our community. So I do think everything came together in the sense of this episode dropping our war, in my husband's words, how we navigated that and how it is bringing us to even more alignment in our lives. And I love a good full circle, So that's my little update. Yeah, there's so many great things that we talked about in this episode, whether it was therapy or mentorship, which is such a huge piece to, I believe, a successful, not only marriage, but parenting. I don't even know how to explain it. And I actually have, wow, I even forgot. I'm just remembering this now. I have a kind of follow-up to that too. Having a mentor in our lives has been so critical and so crucial because, as you can imagine, we don't always agree and we have different perspectives and different thoughts on, I'll give an example just on raising kids, right? So I mentioned the story that happened, the Pesach story with many, and we just had an incident this week that I told my husband, I'm like, oh, this is where we need to check in with our mentor. Has to do with many again, has to do with just basically without details, his hair and his haircuts and what he's trying to accomplish and how he's trying to really tap into who he is and his identity. And it's a struggle because when you have many different identities that you're trying to align together, that they all should work together, it can be really hard, especially for a kid. And we want to support him in the best way possible and also what we think makes the most sense. And sometimes it's very confusing. We don't know, where do we draw the line? Where do we hold the boundary? And I just literally yesterday told my husband, I'm like, we need to check in with our mentor because we aren't grounded and we aren't sure about where we should go. And we need an outside perspective. And there's so many moments like this that come up that I don't know without a mentor. I have my personal mentor, Chaim has his, but then we have ours that together we have a mutual agreement that whatever that mentor says, we both agree to, even if it's not our original perspective. And I just keep thinking what if we didn't have that, we would be flailing in the wind, or we would keep arguing about things, or we wouldn't be very sure or grounded in our decision. So then it reflects so that our kids don't feel sure and grounded because they only feel sure and grounded when you are. That's the honest truth. Even if it's a decision that they don't want to hear, if they can sense that you are sure and you are at peace with your decision, they pick up on that. And when they can sense a tiny bit of discord or a tiny bit of uncertainty, they go in for the kill. I'll tell you, they sense it, they know. So just today, another example, or yesterday, another example of how significant this mentor is in our lives. And I really encourage, if you were to come away with one thing from this podcast, I really encourage that maybe move in that direction, because it's really been so significantly impactful in our lives. So maybe there'll be an opportunity to answer some questions specifically from this episode. We're figuring that out, but I really, really hope you enjoyed it. It was really a privilege and a really fun opportunity to, albeit it's always a little scary when you're on a public platform with your husband, but we had a great time, and I appreciate you allowing us this opportunity. I'm going to end off with a few questions/comments that came in. Two of them, interestingly enough, are about raising kids. They're slightly different, but also connected. So I'm going to read both of those questions, and then I'm going to answer it together in one answer. So the first question was, how do you not blame yourself when your child is going through challenges? So that's one question. And the second question is, how do you let go of expectations and accept your kid for who they are as they grow? Okay, so answering from my own personal experience and my own personal work and growth through parenting, my humble opinion. Number one, how do you not blame yourself? I think the sign of a really invested good mom is a mom that asks themselves this question. Because even though you're not to blame, when we are invested in our kids and we are really looking to grow and to be the best parent we can be, sometimes that guilt or that I'm not good enough or this is my fault comes up. And it just means that you are a parent that really cares. Now, where it's not good is where you actually truly can't get past this idea of it's your fault and you get stuck in that, and then you're not showing up as a productive, healthy parent because you're busy being stuck in this blame. So number one, great. You're thinking about this. You care about your kids. This is important. And number two, I do think, so cliche, but having a therapist can really help you through this process, because I know it's helped me, because there's been many instances or scenarios where I'm like, this is my fault and I'm the common denominator to all the problems in my kids' lives. Like, I go down that road, and having a therapist is really helpful to, number one, first of all, objectively pick apart an episode that you're really struggling with and honestly tell you whether you could have done something better or this is just life and you're human. And even if you could have done something better, you are human and you make mistakes and you show up. And if there is something that you could have done better, then next time you do it better. Maybe there was something you could do better. Maybe there was a piece of this puzzle that is on you. Okay, we're human. We make mistakes. We can't be perfect. The question is, what are you going to do about it next time? Are you going to be so stuck in guilt and shame that that's where you stay? Or are you going to take this experience and you're going to use it as a learning experience and you're going to be like, okay, next time I'm going to do this and this, or next time this is how I'm going to show up. So that's my thoughts around that. A lot of times we are not to blame for our children's struggles. Many times we're not. Sometimes we do play a role in a child's struggle, and we're human and we constantly want to show up better, and we can also repair if we need to. And my favorite thing is really just to always remember that we're human and we make mistakes, and what are we going to learn from these mistakes? The second question was, how do you let go of expectations and accept your kids for who they are? Maybe this is going to sound a little, I don't want to say harsh, but to the point. And the answer to that question is, what's your choice? What's your choice? Not to accept them? It sounds so simple, but when you ask this question of like, how do I let go of the expectations? well, what is your choice? Do you want to hold on to expectations that are not realistic? Do you want to not accept your kid? Like, where is that going to get you? And actually pulling from something that Rabbi Jacobson said in that Farbrengen that I attended at the convention, he said, it's like a two-part thing. Like, if your child is not living up to your expectations, two things need to happen. One thing is you need to grieve that loss. You grieve the loss of thinking that your child is going to be a certain way or they're going to align with your values, and they aren't. And that is sad. It's okay to be sad about that. Spend some time grieving about your loss and your expectations being unmet and just the dreams of what was going to be and what could have been and all of that. Very important. You must grieve that. And then you get on board. Then you get on board with your child and you accept them, because what's your alternative? What does it look like if you don't accept your child for who they are? What does that look like? So I think a really helpful process is we think, how do I accept my child? How do I accept my child? Well, just ask yourself the flip question. Well, what happens if you don't accept them? So this is something that I have a lot of experience with and working through with. It's not easy. It's a process. But I do think remembering what your role as a mother is, and it's not necessarily to make you happy and to do everything that you wanted them to do and to just be the best nachas, walking, you're so proud of. Like, that's not what a mother is. It's a nice bonus if you get that in your parenting journey, but it's not a guarantee that that's what it is. Being a mother is showing up for your child where they are at. So that's my thoughts. And then there was a very nice, sweet message from somebody who also had attended Yessi Jacobson's Farbrengen and agreed that it was a mind-blowing and such an important conversation, and it was her highlight too. I think everyone who was there would agree. Goal of putting it out there in the universe so I can manifest it is I get to have Rabbi Yessi Jacobson on the podcast. I think that would be so fun. So maybe one day that'll be a reality. Anyway, have a great day. Can't wait to see you next time. And don't forget to like and rate the podcast, because that's very helpful. Send me your feedback. Tell me what you loved. Tell me what you didn't love. Tell me what you hope for. I want to meet your expectations. Anyways, have a good one. Okay, so this podcast does not come about magically, and I don't do it alone. I have such an amazing team behind me that makes this all happen. Obviously, I'm your host, Chavie. Our producer and creative director is Eli Ben-Chion. He's awesome. Wouldn't have this without him. Audio is edited and mixed by Reed Seeley. Music by Basia Schechter and Daniel Ori. And this is Totally Unexpected.